Chapter 1139. When the seventh form of the Dharma power of the dragon appeared, Lu Ping knew that he had now truly stepped into the threshold of the middle Dharma stage. However, at this time, it was still far from the point of exit. As the saying goes, good preparation is the key. Just at the moment when Lu Ping's cultivation was promoted, it was the most critical moment for Lu Ping to improve in all aspects in advance. Unfortunately, because of the sword of the true spirit, the Dharma power of the dragon blocked the disaster for him. Lu Ping's own accumulated foundation was consumed by the thunder tribulation. After the eagle claws and eagle eyes appeared, the excess pure yang qi continued to be absorbed by the Dharma power of the dragon. At the same time, the pure yang soul, which was only a little more than half left, suddenly shrank by 2/3. The body of the dragon grew taller all the way, straightaway elongating more than 5 feet, and was still stretching. After experiencing Lei Jing's pain, the Dharma power of the dragon appeared to be more and more agile. It was leisurely hovering in the core space, letting out a long cry. The Dharma power of the dragon was so comfortable, but it scared Deng Ning and the others on Kongming Island half to death. It was not because of the mighty power of Lu Ping's tribulation, but because every roar of the Dharma power of the dragon pierced straight into the minds of several demonic pets. This feeling had already been felt by the demonic pets on Failing Mountain, but this time it was even more intense. Samling was now at the peak of the core forging realm, but this suppression from the bloodline still made Samling kneel on the ground. Lu Qiner had been stuck at the 9th level of the core forging realm because she had not been able to find a heaven-level spirit item with wind and fire. However, she was not of the blood of the flood dragon. Although she also felt the suppression from Lu Ping's bloodline, it was far less fierce than Samling's. As for Debao, Degui, and the purple crystal bee king, they had been frightened by the aura at the beginning of Lu Ping's tribulation. Lu Taohua also knelt on the ground, but she and Lu Ping's bloodline were also considered to be of the same origin, so she did not faint like Debao and the others. Lu Xiaohai had fainted when Lu Ping entered the Dharma power stage. This incident was a shame to him. He was born of the White Forehead clan and was the most arrogant and proud. When Taoist who dominated the western wilderness and the northern plains, he did not even give face to Peng Daoren and Jiao Daoren. Ape Taoist, whose cultivation was similar to Lu Ping, suffered many losses in his hands. He did not expect that he would not be able to withstand the bloodline aura of Lu Ping. This time, no matter what, he could not be frightened and faint again. After Lu Ping had entered the mid-Dharma power stage, his power had more than doubled. However, Lu Xiaohai was now a top demonic cultivator who had just entered the late core forging stage, and was no longer the naive little tiger demon who had been in the early core forging stage. Lu Xiaohai reverted to his original form and stood there. Although he was Lu Ping's follower, he would never bow down to Lu Ping. His 2 front limbs were trembling, and he had no choice but to use most of his strength to retreat. From afar, it looked like he wanted to pounce on Lu Ping at any time. Only Lu Xiaohai himself knew that if he really pounced on Lu Ping, the moment he landed, his 2 front limbs would be broken. Deng Ming sat cross-legged on the ground, staring dumbfoundedly at the majestic phenomenon in the center of Kongming Island. He was not like the other practitioners who were waiting on the outskirts of Kongming Island, who would mistake Lu Ping for a weak late Dharma adept who had luckily survived his second thunder trial. However, it was precisely because he knew that Lu Ping had only survived his first thunder trial that he was so shocked. The strength of his first thunder trial was already comparable to that of his second thunder trial. Just how powerful was this person's cultivation? Perhaps it was not a bad decision to follow this person and become a Jinling practitioner. At least with this person at the helm, Jinling's future achievements would not be low. Moreover, it seemed like it was impossible for him not to join Jinling now. Deng Ning smiled bitterly as he looked at the few magical instruments in his hands. One of them was given to him by Lu Bai earlier, and it contained the relics of a top-notch formation master. From the inheritance that he had obtained from the relics, the deceased was actually a trusted confidant of the Yuan family, and was called Mr. Composition. As a formation master, although Deng Ning was a lone practitioner, the Formation Master was known as the number one Formation Master among the second generation of practitioners. Moreover, this person had the backing of the powerful Yuan family. In order to establish his own perfect formation system, Deng Ming was able to stay in the nether void formation for decades, and rely on his own strength to break the four inner formations. His talent and wisdom were definitely not low, and it was unknown how much foundation he had accumulated in the path of formation. After obtaining the inheritance of the remains, Deng Ming's formation inheritance was considered complete. After that, he obtained the inheritance of the top-notch formation master of the Yuan family. During the more than 10 years that Lu Ping had been in seclusion, Deng Ming's accumulation in the path of formation was not just described as 1,000 miles in a day. Becoming a formation master was just around the corner. The reason why Lu Ping tried so hard to recruit Deng Ming, in addition to his recognition of Deng Ming's talent in the path of formation, was most importantly because of Jinling's own need for a formation master. Jinling was already making preparations to become a large sect, and the restoration of the treasure ship was gradually entering a good state. However, Jinling's formation master inheritance was facing a gap. Although Taoist Master Xianqin was overflowing with talent, and was the only formation master of Jinling, he was not considered outstanding in the path of cultivation. When he first advanced to the late core forging stage, he had already used a trick. After that, he barely advanced to the 9th layer of core forging, and after that, he did not make any progress for decades. Now, his lifespan had reached more than 500 years. A late core forging human cultivator's lifespan was at most 600 years. Even if he had a longevity pill, how many years could it extend? Below Taoist Master Xianqin, there were two formation masters among Jinling's third-generation disciples. One of them was Lu Ping's Tao companion, Taoist Master Xian Hu. However, although Taoist Master Xian Hu was quite talented in the path of formation, he had only cultivated for a short period of time. With Lu Ping's help, he could advance by leaps and bounds, but the path of formation was a process that required more time than cultivation. It was likely that when Taoist Master Xianqian's lifespan was exhausted, Taoist Master Xian Hu would not have become a formation master. If that was really the case, then Jinling would most likely lose the top inheritance in the path of formation masters. Among the series of negative effects that this would bring, the most important one would be that the restoration of the treasure ship would slow down or even stop. If at this time, there could be an absolutely reliable formation master joining them and filling in this gap, then the process of repairing the treasure ship would definitely be like adding wings to a tiger. Deng Ming took out a jade bottle from his storage bag, opened it slightly, and smelled the scent inside as if he was intoxicated. Ah, the spirit forging pill! I didn't expect that a wandering cultivator like me would have the opportunity to step into the Dharma phase. Now that I have a home to return to in the future, when I establish my own formation inheritance system, I will also have a stable environment to pass down my legacy. This is not bad. Chapter 1140. This thunder tribulation could be considered a huge test for Lu Ping. As he had to worry about the Dharma power of the dragon and the sword of true spirit, Lu Ping's physical injuries were not light. After the unexpected appearance of the sword of true spirit, more than half of his accumulated strength was consumed. The remaining strength was far from what Lu Ping had when he condensed his Dharma power. The Dharma power of the dragon grew all the way to a length of 5 feet and 7 feet. Finally, it could no longer grow an inch. The pure yang qi around it was completely absorbed. The Dharma power of the dragon expanded further. A magic talisman floated over from the cloud and was swallowed by the Dharma power of the dragon. Unexpectedly, after the talisman was swallowed by the Dharma power of the dragon, it did not condense a magic seed on the reverse scale. Instead, it exploded and turned into 9 rays of light that scattered into the Dharma power of the dragon. This situation was really beyond Lu Ping's expectations. With a slight thought, 9 rays of light quickly rose around Lu Ping and then combined to form the heavenly water curtain protection great magic power. However, at the moment when Lu Ping changed the great magic power of the dragon, a layer of purplish gold fog covered the originally blue light shield. Lu Ping's divine telekinesis could easily detect the situation outside the great magic power of the dragon, and it was difficult for the cultivators outside to detect Lu Ping's actual situation. If this layer of purplish gold fog was not the Dharma power of the dragon, what was it? Lu Ping's divine telekinesis scanned the Dharma power of the dragon in the core space. Only then did he realize that the Dharma power of the true spirit was no longer a fog that was condensed from vital essence. Instead, it was condensed from vital essence into orderly runes. After forming the entire Dharma power of the true spirit, it was connected to a fog-like talisman. Furthermore, it could change its shape at any time. If it was not the seed talisman formed by the heavenly water curtain, what could it be? This strange change made it difficult for Lu Ping to judge the result. However, at this time, he still had to take the opportunity to condense the second great magic power. This time, he didn't need to advance to the Dharma power stage. The appearance of the Sword of True Spirit had consumed too much of Lu Ping's energy. Unexpectedly, this time it was even stranger. The talisman formed by the three pure eyes had just flown out of the cloud of the dragon. Before it could fly into the Dharma power of the Dharma power, two blood-red rays suddenly shot out from the eyes of the dragon. The talisman directly pierced through the talisman power of the talisman, and immediately disappeared. The lone eagle was even more so. The eagle eyes and blood pupils was the famous great magic power of the lone eagle in the cultivation world. Along with the three pure eyes, it was one of the most powerful eye techniques in the cultivation world. Of course, the three pure eyes was originally a more advanced system of inheritance. Unfortunately, the Taoists who passed down this great magic power only left behind the first 9 cultivation methods, so the three pure eyes could only be passed down in the cultivation world as 1 pure eyes. As for how to integrate the 3 pure eyes, there was no other way. The dragon Dharma power of the lone eagle had devoured the blood of the serpent in the lone eagle, causing the Dharma power of the dragon to have a pair of eagle eyes. Although Lu Ping had already noticed that his eyesight had improved, he did not inherit the eagle eyes and blood pupils of the lone eagle. However, after the talisman of the 3 pure eyes was merged into the eyes of the Dharma power of the dragon, Lu Ping suddenly realized that when he used this new eye technique, its effect was more than doubled. Lu Ping's gaze pierced through the formation that he had hastily set up and looked towards the sky above Kongming Island. Originally, Lu Ping could not see anything above Kongming Island, which was protected by the 9 basic formations. Even when Lu Ping used the 3 pure eyes with all his might, he could only see that the sky above Kongming Island was covered by a layer of white mist, but it did not obstruct the sunlight and the thunder tribulations from descending. Now, the green light that shot out from Lu Ping's eyes carried a hint of golden red, and the sky in Lu Ping's eyes was divided into 9 parts, like 9 balloons that had been squeezed so tightly that there were no gaps between them, covering the entire sky above Kongming Island. These 9 balloon-like formations were the 9 basic formations that protected Kongming Island. 2 great techniques had become natal techniques in a way that Lu Ping could not have predicted, and even Lu Ping did not know if this was a blessing or a curse. However, now was not the time for Lu Ping to hesitate, as the overall improvement brought about by the advancement in his cultivation was slowly fading away. The dragon Dharma power of the dragon swept its body and another talisman floated out from the clouds. When Lu Ping was forming his Dharma power, he had once formed 5 natal techniques in one go, 2 of which were the unimaginable 6 great techniques that were formed from the 6 great techniques. Furthermore, those 6 great techniques did not even form the great technique seeds before they formed the great technique system. These 5 great techniques were the 100 rivers into the sea, vast seas and mulberry fields technique, shapeless sword technique, seeping water sword technique, and divine water lightning. The first 2 were natal techniques, and the last 3 were great techniques. Based on the 9th grade golden core that Lu Ping had formed before he entered the Dharma power stage, it was possible for Lu Ping to form 9 natal techniques. Now that the true eyes of the three pure ones and the heavenly water curtain had changed, even Lu Ping himself did not know if these two great techniques could be considered as two of the 9 natal techniques. In the end, the third talisman did not cause any trouble. After it was swallowed by the Dharma power, it began to form runes on the reverse scale and began to form the 6th natal technique. Unexpectedly, when this great technique seed was more than half formed, it suddenly flashed with a red light. Following that, the entire great technique seed began to shake violently, and then began to disintegrate. Lu Ping sighed helplessly. When he was forming his Dharma power, he had not been able to form the seed of the flying spiral serial kill into his natural mystique. Who would have thought that after advancing to the mid-Dharma stage, he would still not be able to form the seed of the flying spiral serial kill into a natural mystique? In fact, Lu Ping had a rough idea of the reason behind it. Sky Overflowing Boil Sword Art was the most outstanding sword art of the Yingtian sect, and it was based on the principle of water and fire complementing each other. The so-called Sky Overflowing Boil Sword Art was based on the word boil. Since it was going to boil, then apart from water, it also needed heat. Lu Ping's technique was based on the word water. What he wanted was purity and thickness. When he used the appropriate great technique, its power would increase by 30%. However, the range of suitable great techniques would be smaller. Hence, he was able to practice the seeping sword technique of the boiling sky sword technique. However, he was unable to form the great technique seed of the boiling sky sword technique into his natal technique twice in a row. Lu Ping had already sensed that the opportunity brought about by the breakthrough in his training was fading. The Dharma power of the dragon opened its mouth and inhaled. A great technique talisman once again flew out from the clouds. Before it could be swallowed by the Dharma power, the talisman turned into a puddle of water and followed the lines of the seeping sword technique to form another great technique seed. This was the other great technique seed of the boiling sky sword technique, the drowning sword technique, compared to the seeping sword technique, which was more of a defensive sword technique. The drowning sword technique was a great technique for trapping people. Its biggest feature was grinding. This was somewhat similar to the stormy waves hitting the shore sword technique. However, the stormy waves hitting the shore sword technique was more of a stalemate when one was outnumbered. On the other hand, the drowning sword technique was more of a one-on-one suppression. Through the sword technique, the opponent would be pressured step by step. In the end, the opponent would be captured alive when they could no longer hold on. Just as Lu Ping had successfully condensed the great technique seed of the drowning sword technique. On the reverse scale of the Dharma power, Lu Ping had already sensed that the opportunity to improve his great technique due to the advancement in his training had disappeared. Feeling helpless, Lu Ping could only focus on the many Dharma treasures and spiritual treasures in the core space once again. Around the Dharma power, the natal gentian formation was still tightly revolving. The 9th rank white jade lotus bloomed to form a huge lotus throne. The Dharma power of the dragon would often rest on the throne. Around it were 12 gentian pearls that twinkled like 12 five-colored moons. The natal gentian formation was connected to the Dharma power of the dragon. As the Dharma power of the dragon breathed in and refined the origin chi and pure yang chi, it was the first to benefit. The one who benefited the most was the 9th rank white jade lotus under the Dharma power. Now that the 9th treasure restriction had been condensed and connected, the power of the natal gentian formation would definitely increase by another level when the formation became a top-notch spirit-nurturing treasure. However, the one who benefited the most from Lu Ping's heavenly tribulation was undoubtedly the thunder calabash of 7 treasures. This guy had used Lu Ping's heavenly tribulation to condense the 8th and 9th treasure restrictions in one fell swoop. Now it was also a spirit-nurturing treasure. This really surprised Lu Ping for a while. He remembered that this guy still had a few natural treasures that he had not absorbed. How could he condense the 9th treasure restriction? Although this guy was still a spirit-nurturing treasure after consecutive heavenly tribulations, it advanced with a swagger until it was right next to the praying mantis. After hesitating for a while, it finally stopped. Outside the praying mantis, the thin water-flowing sword, the invisible sword, the Linglong wine cauldron, and the cloud sail did not stop this guy from surpassing them and getting closer to the Dharma power. "I'm so angry, so angry!" Above the wine cauldron, Linglong was lying on the edge of the dragon Dharma power. She shouted, "I want to go through the heavenly tribulation. I want to go through the second heavenly tribulation. This guy is too infuriating." The praying mantis brandished its pair of large blades in a crisscrossing manner, as if demonstrating its might to the 7 treasures Thunder gourd. Then, it snatched a puff of pure yang qi that the Dharma form of the dragon was spitting out. With the growth of Lu Ping's cultivation, especially after passing the heavenly tribulation, the pure yang qi in the Dharma power's body began to completely integrate with it. The effect of refining and nurturing the treasures around it became more and more obvious. Lu Ping opened his eyes slightly. He didn't know when, but there was a cold girl standing in front of him. Seeing that Lu Ping was looking at her, the girl slightly bowed to Lu Ping and said, "Moli greets Master. Many thanks for your help." Lu Ping smiled and said, "You are the sword of the true spirit. Moli, from now on, this will be the name of the sword." His divine sense covered a radius of nearly 50 miles, and he was startled as if he had discovered something strange. Kongming Island was a large island with a radius of nearly 500 miles. Naturally, Lu Ping's divine will could not envelop the entire island. However, Lu Ping's divine will could instantly come into contact with the protective array that enveloped Kongming Island. Previously, Lu Ping had used the 3 Pure One's true eyes to check on the dome of the protective array. However, he did not realize that the protective array could actually connect with Lu Ping's divine will. The moment Lu Ping's divine will came into contact with the array, the entire Kongming Ocean, with the 9 foundation arrays as the center, extended out from the other 9 layers of arrays. In total, the area covered by the 10 layers of arrays was all captured by Lu Ping's divine will. This was a huge area, which meant that Lu Ping's divine will could observe everything within the area covered by the Kongming Islands array. At this moment, the cultivators from the South Sea, East Sea, and Middle Earth who had heard the news and rushed over to ambush in the Kongming array were all under Lu Ping's surveillance. What a grand scene! Lu Ping had thought that his heavenly tribulation on Kongming Island might attract the attention of those with ulterior motives, but he did not expect that it would attract so many people. This almost put Lu Ping in a desperate situation. Lu Ping himself did not expect to accumulate such a large number of heavenly tribulation phenomena during the year when he was refining the Lone Eagle's bloodline. According to the experience of ordinary cultivators, the heavenly tribulation could be summoned at any time. It would only take a few hours to 2 to 3 hours for the heavenly tribulation to pass. Even if he attracted the attention of those with ulterior motives, Lu Ping was confident that he would be able to escape easily. According to Lu Ping's rough estimate, there were at least a few hundred cultivators gathered in the Kongming array. These array masters only made up a small portion of the cultivators. Most of them were obviously here for Lu Ping. Among the hundreds of arrays that extended from the 9 foundation arrays on Kongming Island, besides the 9 main arrays, almost all of the other arrays had cultivators guarding them. This meant that no matter which teleporter Lu Ping used to activate from Kongming Island to the outside world, he would encounter cultivators guarding the teleporter. Once the 2 sides started fighting, Lu Ping would immediately be surrounded by cultivators who rushed over. At the same time, Lu Ping also understood why these cultivators had gathered together but did not attempt to break the Kongming array by force. Back then, the Kongming sect had been destroyed not because the protective array on the island had been broken, but because many Dharma adepts had broken through and entered Kongming Island. Although the combined forces of the various sects were not as powerful as the one that had destroyed the Kongming sect, as long as they joined forces and attacked together, it was not impossible to break the array. However, after the battle that had destroyed the Kongming sect, the array formation system of the Kongming array had long been destroyed. Now, it was only relying on the Kongming Island's spirit vein to barely maintain its basic operations. If it were to be forcefully broken again, the 9 foundation arrays would not be able to be restored. Once that happened, the hundreds of arrays that extended from the Kongming array would collapse over time, and this sacred place for array masters would no longer exist. This was also the reason why no one had been able to enter Kongming Island in the thousands of years since the Kongming sect had been destroyed. It was not because they could not, but because the array masters hidden within the Kongming array had joined forces to stop them. Now that someone had been able to enter Kongming Island without breaking the Kongming array, many array masters quickly thought of the 32 Kongming essences that the Kongming sect had obtained. Then, when they thought of entering Kongming Island without breaking the 9 foundation arrays, not a single array master could resist the temptation. Furthermore, the destruction of the Kongming sect had been done in a hurry. The huge Kongming Island might not have been completely looted. At the very least, the unique divine will sculpting technique and the 9 foundation arrays were still a mystery. If they could obtain these legacies, as they thought of this, the array masters' hearts burned with eagerness. They could not wait any longer. Lu Ping waved his hand and a space door immediately formed. Lu Ping took a step forward and when he reappeared, he was already close to Deng Ming and the others. Deng Ming's hands did not stop moving. On one hand, he made a golden abacus, and on the other hand, he placed black and white chess pieces on the huge chessboard from time to time. Sometimes, he would pick out a few black and white chess pieces from the chessboard. As for the set of calculation tokens that Deng Ming used to calculate the formation, he had already thrown them away. The golden abacus was the legacy item that Deng Ming had obtained from the remains of the 5th array formation, while the chessboard was one of Wen Yuan's formation-setting magic treasures. These 2 magic treasures were extremely brilliant formation-setting magic treasures for array masters. Their value was equivalent to that of a spirit treasure for an ordinary cultivator. With Lu Ping's current knowledge, among all the array-laying treasures he had seen, only the array-laying token made from the spirit sealing would he gave to Hu Lily had the potential to surpass these 2 treasures in the future. The other treasures were the array-laying token that enlightened Master Xian Chen, who had been an array formation grandmaster for 100 years. But even the array-laying token was inferior to these 2 treasures. At this moment, the 2 magic treasures were being used by Deng Ming to calculate the array formations at the same time. Even Lu Ping was shocked when he saw this. He could not help but ask, "Setting up a formation and calculating is so complicated. Even if you have 2 perfect formation-setting magic treasures, you don't have to use them at the same time, do you? Don't tell me you can still multitask?" Although Lu Ping could also control multiple magic treasures at the same time to fight against an enemy, Lu Ping's divine will was extremely strong. Moreover, controlling magic treasures was not like setting up a formation. The latter was many times more complicated and could not be done with just a strong divine will. Hearing this, Deng Ming raised his head and looked at Lu Ping. He smiled and said, "Congratulations, senior brother, for passing the Thunder Trial and achieving the Mid-Dharma stage." Lu Ping saw that while Deng Ming was talking to him, the 2 formation-setting magic treasures in his hands did not stop. The surprise in Lu Ping's eyes grew stronger. He said, "Do you really have this kind of secret technique that allows you to multitask?" Deng Ming smiled and said, "It's a secret technique that I inherited from Senior Bai Ran. Oh, that is, from the remains of the senior cultivator that I found in the 5th formation. This secret technique allows me to multitask in a short period of time. It can greatly speed up the calculation of a formation." Deng Ming paused and continued. "This senior Bai Ran was the successor of the Ji Ran sect of the Central Plains. This Ji Ran sect was also a small sect that was famous for its formations hundreds of years ago in the Central Plains. This secret technique, telekinesis life, could be said to be the foundation of this sect. Unfortunately, it was coveted in the end, and the entire sect, except for him, was annihilated. After that, Senior Bai Ran did not dare to trust anyone. He could only sneak into the South Sea and hide in this Kongming formation." Lu Ping nodded. The reason for the destruction of the Ji Ran sect was similar to that of the Kongming sect. The secret technique, telekinesis life, was indeed impressive. However, To be able to obtain such a highly effective secret technique in a short period of time, the price must have been very high. Just as Lu Ping was about to ask, the two magic treasures in Deng Ming's hands suddenly shone brightly. Deng Ming was overjoyed and said, "It's done!" Immediately after, Deng Ming's complexion quickly turned ashen. Clearly, the side effects of using this secret technique had come. At the same time, the clothes on Deng Ming's left shoulder were already stained with blood. Lu Ping frowned. Only now did he notice that there were blood stains on Deng Ming's chest and back. Clearly, he had used this telekinesis life secret technique twice before. Lu Ping asked, "At the cost of self-mutilation?" Deng Ming smiled in an unconcerned manner. He stretched out his hand and patted his left shoulder. The blood-red color that was still spreading immediately stopped. He said, "This is nothing. You should know that Senior has been in closed-door cultivation for more than 10 years. With the help of the formation inheritance of these two, I have grasped the arrangement of dozens of exquisite formations and the method to break them. Now I have also figured out 2 of the 7th level of the Nether Void formation. Compared to these achievements, these small injuries are really nothing." Chapter 1142. After experiencing the first lightning tribulation, Lu Ping had experienced the importance of a cultivator's physical body. If a cultivator's physical body collapsed during the lightning tribulation, the Dharma form would immediately disappear due to the loss of a foundation. On the contrary, if the physical body was strong enough, it would be able to support the Dharma form during the lightning tribulation. At the very least, before the Dharma form became a celestial spirit, the physical body would always be the Dharma form's bridge to communicate with heaven and earth. This kind of secret technique that came at the cost of self-mutilation seemed to only leave a small wound on the cultivator's physical body. However, if one wanted to recover from these wounds, it would take more than just healing the wound on the surface of the skin. Furthermore, the blood that flowed out was the essence of a source of aura for every cultivator. In the long run, not only would it harm one's cultivation, it would also harm one's physical body. In the end, it would endanger the cultivator's future on the path of cultivation. Lu Ping knew that Deng Ming was also a stubborn person. Since he had already chosen this secret technique, he naturally understood the pros and cons of it. Lu Ping rummaged through his storage device and took out a bottle of qi-replenishing blood-nourishing pills with golden nuts, and handed it to Deng Ming. He then congratulated him. "In that case, junior brother Deng is now a first-rate formation grandmaster. Our sect has really gotten lucky this time." Deng Ming replied humbly. "If it weren't for senior brother's help, I would have lost my life long ago, let alone senior by Rant's inheritance and grandmaster Wen Yuan's inheritance. I wouldn't have been able to dream of achieving what I have today." Lu Ping waved his hand and said, "Wen Yuan is after me. I'm just an innocent bystander. Come to think of it, I'm the one who dragged you into danger. Although we've entered Kongming Island this time, the celestial phenomenon caused by my lightning tribulation has lasted for too long. I don't know how many cultivators from various sects have been lured over and are waiting for us in the Kongming Legacy formation. We're still in danger." "Oh." Deng Ming was not surprised by this. He smiled and said, "If I were like you and could cause such a huge commotion during a thunder tribulation, I wouldn't hesitate to attract all the cultivators in the cultivation world." Deng Ming had witnessed the entire process of Lu Ping's lightning tribulation. Naturally, he knew just how big of a ruckus Lu Ping had caused. The tribulation clouds had been hovering above Dark Void Island for over a year. Additionally, unlike the cultivators hiding within the Dark Void Array, Deng Ming believed that this was just a second lightning tribulation for a cultivator with a weaker cultivation base. He knew that this was Lu Ping's first thunder tribulation, which was comparable to the first thunder tribulation of the second thunder tribulation. Moreover, Lu Ping seemed to have passed through it unscathed. This was what truly shocked him. Therefore, even though Deng Ming could not see what was happening outside the Dark Void Array, he could imagine that the area outside Dark Void Island must have attracted the attention of many cultivators. Seeing that Deng Ming was not panicking in the slightest, Lu Ping could not help but think even more highly of him. He smiled and said, "How is it? You must have looted Dark Void Island for the past decade or so. How's the harvest?" As he spoke, Sam Ling and the others came forward to greet him. Lu Bai also handed Lu Ping's storage magic item to Lu Ping. Over the past decade or so, Lu Ping's many followers had also gained something. Some had improved their cultivation, while others had gained something from Dark Void Island. However, most of the things were ordinary items that did not catch Lu Ping's attention. Sam Ling and the others kept the items. What Lu Ping needed was the spirit herbs that grew on the island. No one had entered this place for thousands of years. Nourished by the large spirit veins on the island, some of the spirit herbs had multiplied and covered quite a large area. There were many spirit herbs that were 1,000 and 3,000 years old, which were what Lu Ping needed the most at the moment. However, before harvesting these spirit herbs, he had to let the purple crystal be king, and its subordinates have a good time. Since the last time on Fei Ling Mountain, when Lu Ping had advanced to the Dharma stage, he had killed 90% of the purple crystal bee swarm. However, after decades of recuperation, the purple crystal bee king had finally expanded its swarm to 3,000. However, this time, the purple crystal bee king was no longer blindly expanding its swarm. Instead, it paid more attention to the quality of the swarm. As a result, the size of the swarm had been controlled at 3,000 for the past few decades. However, more than half of these 3,000 bees had advanced to the blood condensation stage. If they formed a Dao soldier formation, its power would be twice as strong as before. Most of these gains were related to formations, so they were kept by Deng Ming. In the past decade or so, Deng Ming had undoubtedly gained the most. Deng Ming smiled and said, "Many of these gains can be used to build, repair, and improve large-scale formations, such as the sect-protecting formation. Also, many of these can be used on the treasured ship. In the future, when we reach the North Sea, we should have something to show off. It would be good to present it as a token of our loyalty." Lu Ping was amused. With Deng Ming's current status as a formation master, if he wanted to find a home in a sect, his status would not be lower than that of a Dharma adept. Naturally, Jinling was no exception. However, since Deng Ming had this intention, it was obvious that he had a certain sense of belonging to Jinling. Lu Ping was naturally happy and tacitly agreed to Deng Ming's plan. Moreover, if Deng Ming was able to produce results upon arriving at Jinling, he would be able to quickly gain the recognition of Jinling and devote himself to the restoration of the treasured ship. Most of the gains on Kongming Island were naturally due to De Bao's efforts. He passed 8 to 9 miniature and small-scale spirit-gathering pearls to Lu Ping and said, "Boss, should we?" De Bao made a pulling gesture, obviously wanting to take the spirit vein here with him. Lu Ping shook his head and said, "The spirit vein here has already merged with the spell. The moment we touch the spirit vein, the spell will definitely collapse. When that happens, the cultivators hiding in the spell will rush in and kill us, and we won't be able to escape even if we want to." De Bao looked at everything on the island regretfully. Lu Ping saw this and smiled. "We've already gotten the most out of this. The rest of the things that we can't take away will be taken by the people outside." De Bao only smiled when he heard this. Beside him, Deng Ming could tell that Lu Ping did not seem to be troubled by the current situation, so he smiled and said, "Looks like Senior already has a plan to escape." Lu Ping smiled and said, "I have some ideas, but I'm afraid that we will still have to fight when the time comes. At least it will be better than stepping into the enemy's ambush and being surrounded. When the time comes, it will be a battle between Dharma adepts, and none of you will be able to help. Let's just go into the House of Gold first." Lu Ping then put Sam Ling and the others into the House of Gold. Initially, Sam Ling, Lu Qiner, and Lu Xiaohai were extremely unwilling. Sam Ling was now a peak core forging adept, and if they worked together, even early Dharma adepts would not be a match for them. Lu Qiner practiced both wind and fire. Although she had not achieved the golden elixir stage yet, she was confident that she would be able to deal with Dharma adepts. As for Lu Xiaohai, he had just advanced to the late core forging stage and was in high spirits. Naturally, he also wanted to fight against powerful people. All this while, Lu Ping's followers had been under Lu Ping's care. Whenever they were in danger, it was usually Lu Ping who was fighting alone. These proud and arrogant fellows were of noble birth, and all of them hoped that Lu Ping would give them a chance to prove themselves. However, Lu Ping still threw them into the House of Gold without any explanation. Beside him, Deng Ming said, "Senior, as your so-called followers, sooner or later, you will have to let them handle things on their own. If you always have to take care of everything for them, how are you different from a greenhouse flower?" Lu Ping smiled bitterly and said, "Junior Marshal Brother Deng is right. It's just that sometimes, they really have no other choice. Places that I call dangerous are not places that they can set foot in. In addition, their backgrounds are a little tricky, so there's usually no other way." Deng Ming shook his head and did not say anything else. The two of them arrived at the edge of Kongming Island. Looking at the formation in front of them, Deng Ming said, "This is one of the 9 protective formations of Kongming Island. For thousands of years, no one has been able to understand any of them. Where did these 9 protective formations come from? There are even rumors that these 9 protective formations may have been passed down from Jiao Daoran. Even the Kongming sect probably knew about it, but didn't know why. Jiao Daoran could be said to be the origin of the cultivation world's formation art. It was understandable that the Kongming sect would be suspected of setting up such an ancient formation. However, now that Lu Ping knew the origin of these 9 protective formations and had used his divine sense to carve the 9 protective formations into the sword of the true spirit, he naturally would not allow these 9 protective formations to be passed down to the world. Lu Ping's hands touched dozens of mysterious hand seals, all of which were recorded in the golden scale. These hand seals were different from any other hand seals used to activate an array formation in the cultivation world. Even Deng Ming, who was watching from the side, was baffled by what he was doing. However, after Lu Ping imprinted each of the hand seals onto the formation in front of him, the formation immediately lit up with a faint layer of light. Lu Ping's eyes suddenly shot out 2 beams of light. He looked at the array formation wall and nodded in satisfaction. Then, he gestured to Deng Ming beside him and said, "Junior Marshal Brother, do you want to see the true face of these 9 array formations that are the best in the cultivation world?" Deng Ming already knew that Lu Ping had most likely obtained the true inheritance of these 9 protective formations from the moment Lu Ping's hands began to perform the hand seals. He was already indescribably excited. When he heard Lu Ping's words, he couldn't help but nod and look at Lu Ping with anticipation. Lu Ping chuckled and reached out to place his hand on Deng Ming's shoulder. An unparalleled power erupted from Deng Ming's shoulder. Then, in a daze, Deng Ming's divine sense seemed to see a pair of strange eyes staring at him. It was as if the eyes could instantly see through his soul. Deng Ming couldn't help but shiver and immediately became clear-headed. Then, he heard Lu Ping's voice. "Junior brother, you can open your eyes and look." Dense array nodes flashed on the protective wall in front of them, just like a star chart in the night sky. Instead, he continued moving quickly along Kongming Island. Every time he passed by a formation, he would use a secret technique to erase dozens of nodes in the formation shield. Then, the nodes in the formation would begin to dissipate on their own. It was only a matter of time before the formation on Kongming Island completely collapsed. Something's not right. Lao Zhu Yuan Trigram had studied formations on Kongming Island for over 100 years, and he was one of the few formation masters in the entire cultivation world. After Lu Ping destroyed 5 or 6 of the 9 foundation formations, he finally noticed that something was wrong. Li Shiqian was slightly startled and asked, "Grand Master, what's wrong?" Lao Zhu Yuan Trigram furrowed his brows as if he was calculating something anxiously. After a while, he said in a deep voice, "Something's wrong. The Kongming array seems to be collapsing." "What? That's impossible!" Li Shiqian was in disbelief and said, "Back when the cultivators from various sects attacked Kongming Island, the formation did not collapse even after being heavily damaged. How could it be collapsing now?" Lao Tzu Yuan Trigram shook his head and said, Old man doesn't know what's going on either, but the person who snuck into Kongming Island is probably coming out soon. Get ready to attack. We must obtain the secrets of that person. Back when the various sects invaded Kongming Island, none of them managed to obtain the most important inheritance of Kongming Island. Not long after that, the formation masters from the Guangfa sect, Talisman Pavilion, Flowing Cloud sect, and other large sects in the South Sea soon noticed that something was wrong and guessed that Lu Ping was coming out. Then, the entire Dark Kongming Ocean began to shake, including the Dark Kongming Formation. It was as if layers of waves were rolling out from the center of the Dark Kongming Island, and the protective walls of every formation began to ripple. After that, the cultivators of the entire Kongming Ocean witnessed a rare sight. The sky above Kongming Island, which had been enveloped by the Kongming sect's 9 foundation formations, suddenly blossomed. To be more precise, the 9 formations that had originally been pressing against each other in the sky above Kongming Island, enveloping the entire sky above Kongming Island, had now completely opened up like a blooming flower. Just as the cultivators of the entire Kongming Ocean were attracted by the strange sight before them, Lu Ping had slipped out of the 9 formations the moment a gap opened up. He then used an invisible escape technique to escape. The moment the 9 formations suddenly opened up, many cultivators who had been lying in ambush in the array realized that something was wrong. The cultivator who had hidden in Kongming Island had probably taken this opportunity to escape. However, even though they were aware of what might happen, they were still hiding in the lost array formation. At this time, the protective array formation above their heads had become an obstacle in their pursuit of Lu Ping. Although most of the array formations had array masters in them, and most of the array masters who chose this particular array formation had mostly studied the array formation in front of them, it wasn't easy to activate an array formation at will. With the pellet forging pavilion's help, Lu Ping would have been long gone. Yuan Trigram Laozu quickly opened the 7th formation that Li Shiqian was in and looked around. At this moment, the huge blooming flower in the sky above Kongming Island was slowly closing up again. Yuan Trigram Laozu anxiously pushed Li Shiqian and said, If the 9 foundation formations can be activated, the person who has snuck into Kongming Island must have obtained the formation inheritance of Kongming Island and taken the opportunity to escape. Go and find him. As long as you can delay him for a while, the cultivators from the various sects will definitely rush over. The old man wants to take a look at Kongming Island to fulfill his centuries-old wish. Among the hundreds of formations in the Nether Void formation, Patriarch Yuan Trigram was one of the first to come out of the formation. However, many of the formation masters who were hiding behind the formations had come out of the Nether Void formation even though their cultivation in formations might be weaker. Many of them could not wait to sneak into Nether Void Island before the 9 formations returned to normal. Yuan Trigram Laozu flew all the way and soon arrived above Kongming Island before the 9 formations closed up again. He saw a few inconspicuous minor repairs rushing over from the outermost periphery of the formation, and were about to land on Kongming Island. Yuan Trigram Laozu was instantly enraged. A few ignorant minor repairs who only knew a little about formations actually dared to covet Kongming Island's treasures. Although Yuan Trigram Laozu was a formation master of the Crystal Palace, he was still a Dharma Power Laozu. He was usually high and mighty, and had long regarded Kongming Island as the Crystal Palace's spoils of war. There was no way he would allow a few minor repairs to take advantage of him. Immediately, he cast a few spells and killed 2 of the minor repairs. He then continued to attack, intending to kill a few minor repairs who had rushed over. However, he was indeed met with resistance from these minor repairs. Yuan Trigram Laozu was, after all, a mid-Dharma adept. It was not difficult for him to take care of a few minor repairs. However, at this time, the 9 foundational formations were about to close up. Yuan Trigram Laozu first sank his body into the formation, but he did not stop attacking. He wanted to completely kill these minor repairs who had tried to enter together with him, or at least block them outside the formation. In the sky, a few more streaks of light rushed over from different directions, intending to enter Kongming Island before the 9 foundational formations closed up. However, when they saw that these minor repairs were blocked outside the formation, they joined in the attack without saying a word. The first chaotic battle above the Kongming Sea began at the entrance of Kongming Island. Now that the Kongming Nether Formation had been activated, all the minor repairs hidden within the formation wanted to take this opportunity to enter Kongming Island and see the true core of the Kongming Nether Formation up close. As for the minor repairs who had sneaked into the island, they had forgotten about him at this time. Naturally, the minor repairs from the various sects would go after him. Li Shiqian and the others naturally did not understand the minor repairs that these minor repairs had spent decades and centuries in the Kongming Nether Formation. Perhaps they could guess, but they could not empathize with them. Lu Ping stealthily flew outwards. He had predicted that most of the minor repairs who had come to ambush him would be hidden within the various layers of the Kongming Nether Formation. In reality, with the Kongming essence in hand, Lu Ping's original plan was to activate another teleportation formation and escape before the minor repairs from the various sects arrived. However, he did not expect the heavenly tribulation to arrive so early and attract so many minor repairs to ambush him. This caused Lu Ping's original plan to fail. Fortunately, Lu Ping had obtained the Golden Scale, the highest heritage of the Kongming sect. Not only that, but he could also activate the 9 foundation array formations. Hence, he was able to use this method to shake off the pursuit of most of the cultivators and escape to the Kongming Sea. "Who are you? Please stay behind for a chat. I am Li Shiqian of the Crystal Palace." However, in the end, Lu Ping had only escaped from the pursuit of most of the minor repairs. Moreover, he was currently flying invisibly. In order to better conceal himself, he had no choice but to slow down. Thus, Li Shiqian, who had caught up from behind, discovered him and caught up to him. As he spoke, Li Shiqian did not hold back at all. He raised a crystal mirror in his hand and a ray of light flashed in Lu Ping's direction. The concealed Lu Ping could no longer hide himself, and was exposed. "What did you obtain on the Kongming Island? Please hand it over." Li Shiqian leaped up and pointed the crystal whip in his hand at the sky. Countless crystal whips lashed at Lu Ping. "My humble sex Yuanghua Laozu greatly admires Your Excellency's exquisite cultivation in the art of formations. Please, Mr. Wen, stay for a chat," Li Shiqian asked in a loud voice. On one hand, Mr. Wen had hindered his pursuit with the help of the spell formation. So, Li Shiqian was afraid that Mr. Wen would escape. So, he had shouted to expose Mr. Wen's whereabouts. On the other hand, he hoped to attract the attention of the others so that they could join hands to stop Mr. Wen. At this time, Lu Ping had arrived at the boundary between the outer layer of the Void Nether Array Formation and the outer layer of the Void Nether Array Formation. It was easier to open the outer layer of the Void Nether Array Formation, and the outer layer of the Void Nether Array Formation. Some cultivators heard Li Shiqian's words and immediately surrounded Lu Ping. Lu Ping did not stop. He leaped forward and tried to escape. Suddenly, a cultivator moved to stop him. "Senior, please wait. Please stay for a chat." Lu Ping was furious and shouted, "You're asking for it." The 1,000-chance umbrella in his hand suddenly spun, and countless blade lights drifted out from the umbrella in all directions. The cultivators who attacked cried out in alarm and cast all kinds of spells and divine abilities in an attempt to defend themselves, but it was of no use. The blade lights directly smashed into their magic treasures, tore apart their spells and divine abilities, cut through their protective aura, and cut into their bodies. The 7 or 8 cultivators who had rushed to stop Yi Futian were decapitated in the blink of an eye. Such a cruel method caused those who came later to stop in their tracks. "Get out of the way. Let the old man do it." Many of the cultivators moved aside. They saw an early Dharma adept rush over and say, "The old man is Shaji of the Sand Reef sect. Please stay and give an explanation to the cultivators of the various sects who are waiting here." The Sand Reef sect. Lu Ping knew of this sect. It was one of the 25 sects in the overseas region. However, it was ranked at the bottom. Among the 5 Phantom Islands, it was stationed on Yuanling Island. Lu Ping had never had any dealings with the cultivators of this sect. Lu Ping was anxious. Previously, he had killed 7 or 8 cultivators in one go to establish his dominance. Although it had taken some time, he had shocked the cultivators who had overestimated themselves and tried to stop Lu Ping. He had done this so that he could leave this place smoothly. Who would have thought that such a person would appear out of nowhere? This made Lu Ping feel disgusted. Although this person's abilities were average among the Dharma adepts, he could not be defeated as easily as before. Behind him, Li Shiqian had already broken free from the restraints of the Matrix, which had been greatly reduced in power. He was once again chasing after Lu Ping. One in front and one behind, he had actually formed a pincer attack. Lu Ping was infuriated. Naturally, he wouldn't hold back against Patriarch Shaji, who was trying to surround him. First, he struck out with the Yin Water Divine Lightning, causing Patriarch Shaji to shudder in fear. Then, the array formation beneath his feet suddenly broke and waves of seawater rose up like the tentacles of a jellyfish, wrapping around Lu Ping's body. As the seawater rose up, a mist spread out and rustling sounds could be heard from within. It was as if a rainstorm had suddenly started. Cries of alarm could also be heard coming from within the mist. The thousand chance umbrella in Lu Ping's hands closed, but it turned into a long spear and stabbed forward. Suddenly, there was a scream from within the mist, and then there was no more sound. The divine Yin Water Thunder, the art of water control, the art of traveling through clouds and summoning rain, as well as the flying whirlwind strike that had turned into a spear. In just a moment, Lu Ping had used 4 spells in a row, and an early Dharma adept, Laozu, was dead or alive. Not only did the surrounding practitioners, who had already noticed this, burst into an uproar, but even Li Shiqian, who had already caught up with Lu Ping, was stunned. However, he did not relax his pace, and his expression became more serious. The crystal whip in his hand flew up again, but this time, there was a 9-story white jade pagoda above his head, with 8 floors lit up. Just as the crystal whip suddenly disappeared in midair, and when it reappeared, it was already in front of Lu Ping. Li Shiqian pointed at the white jade pagoda above his head, and the 8th floor of the pagoda shone brightly. With Li Shiqian as the center, all the spells within a radius of 10 miles disappeared, including the art of traveling through clouds and summoning rain, which was not far away, and revealed Shaji Laozu, who was on his last breath. Even the matrix that had been set up under his feet had stopped working, and many of them had exploded. The supreme magical power of the Crystal Palace was Tranquil Ocean River Purity Formula. Stirring up a storm on the ocean wasn't much of an ability. What was truly capable of was dispelling that storm. This was the true meaning behind the legacy of the founder of the Crystal Palace, the Tranquil Ocean River Clear Mantra. It was said that within a radius of 30,000 miles of the Crystal Palace, there had never been a huge wave, whether it was a storm, a tsunami, an earthquake, or a volcanic eruption. Since the establishment of the Crystal Palace, there had never been a huge wave. Within this sea area with a diameter of more than 60,000 miles, it had always been boundless and calm. This was because Laozu, the founder of the Crystal Palace, had turned the Tranquil Ocean River Purity Formula into a tactical matrix to protect the surroundings of the Crystal Palace. In the future, as the Crystal Palace continued to develop, this protective tactical matrix formed by the magical power of the Crystal Palace was also constantly repaired and expanded, directly covering the sea area with a radius of 30,000 miles, shocking the world. At this moment, Lu Ping felt as if he had fallen into a quagmire. At this moment, it would take him 3 to 5 times more real essence to barely perform a magic art. Moreover, after the magic art was formed, it would continue to be weakened by the omnipresent magical power. Your Excellency, you'd better stop and explain it to us. After all, Your Excellency is a disciple of the Yuan family. We will definitely not make things difficult for you. This time, Li Shiqian seemed to be certain that Lu Ping could not escape, so he could not help but fly towards Lu Ping. However, Just when he was about to fall within 500 feet of Lu Ping, he suddenly felt a chill in his heart. With a clang, the crystal whip that was swinging towards Lu Ping's back was suddenly knocked away. Before he could recall the crystal whip, he saw two flashes of light in the sky, and this magic treasure that was often used by the cultivators of the Crystal Palace was broken into two pieces. Then, Li Shiqian saw that Lu Ping, who had turned around, suddenly had an extremely exaggerated scissors in his hand. The scissors in Lu Ping's hand opened and closed, and two sky-piercing blade lights, one from above and one from below, almost cut through the sky and crisscrossed towards Li Shiqian. "The spirit treasure is broken in two. How can it be in your hands?" Li Shiqian screamed in a strange voice. Instead of moving forward, he retreated in the air and shouted, "Yi Laozu of the Northern Alliance was actually killed by your excellency." "No wonder, no wonder!" Lu Ping did not speak at this time. He now had the appearance of Wen Yuan. The less he spoke, the more likely it was that he would make a mistake. However, the two blade lights did not stop and chased him from the sky and the ground. The power of the so-called Sikam River was cut like a piece of rag in front of this second tribulation spirit treasure. After forcing Li Shiqian to retreat, Lu Ping did not look at the result of this second tribulation spirit treasure's attack. More and more cultivators in the distance had already noticed this place. Lu Ping did not dare to stay at all. While Li Shiqian was concentrating on resolving the fierce attack of the second tribulation spirit treasure, he stretched out his hand and opened a space door in front of him. After taking a step, he was already 40 miles away. Once again, Lu Ping used his space magic until he was completely out of the range of the Kongming array and the array that the cultivators had set up later on. Only then did he fly out of the Kongming Sea. Unexpectedly, before he could fly a few miles, his expression suddenly changed. His flying body did not have time to stop or even retreat, and Lu Ping's body directly flew up dozens of feet. Then, in the direction where Lu Ping flew, a huge spatial rift suddenly opened up. It was as if a giant beast had opened its mouth and was about to close in on him. If Lu Ping had not flown straight up, he would have been swallowed by this space crack no matter if he went forward, backward, or stopped. "Haha, so it's a fellow cultivator from the Yuan family. I'm Nenyu from the Yulin sect. Nice to meet you." Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. "It's actually a grand cultivator, this is troublesome." When a practitioner's training reached the mid-Dharma stage, he could use his treasures to teleport across space and fight with the enemy under the control of the practitioner's divine will. However, every time he used this power, the practitioner had to recall his treasures before he could use it again. When he reached the late Dharma stage, the practitioner could use his treasures to teleport across space as he pleased. He did not have to recall his treasures before he could use them again. However, Lu Ping had obviously broken this common understanding. When he had just advanced to the Dharma stage, he could already teleport a distance of 30 miles, which was almost equivalent to the teleportation distance of a great Dharma adept. After that, he had mastered telekinesis, a power that only mid-Dharma adepts could use. Now that he had advanced to the mid-Dharma stage, he could use multiple telekinesis, a power that originally belonged to late Dharma adepts, so effortlessly. How could this not give Nanyu Laozu a fright when he did not know what was going on? Nanyu Laozu tried to repeat what he had done, and once again conjured an ice wall to block the thin water-flowing sword. However, he did not expect that the dual flying sword would suddenly explode into a ball of lightning and fire. A bolt of lightning suddenly shot out in all directions, breaking through Nanyu Laozu's defense in one fell swoop. The thunderclap sword technique. This was a powerful sword technique that Lu Ping had learned from a great Dharma adept from the green sea snakes in the perished land. This sword technique could be combined with the Yin water thunder to form an even more powerful thunder sword technique. Although it was not as powerful as a true supreme power, it was still much more powerful than ordinary great powers. When Lu Ping had advanced to the mid-Dharma stage to upgrade his natural power, this sword technique was originally second only to the drowning resolve. It was also part of Lu Ping's plan to upgrade his natural power. It was a pity that Lu Ping had wasted too much energy on the sword of the true spirit on resisting the thunder calamity. As a result, this thunderclap sword technique could not be transformed into a natural power by Lu Ping in the end. Even so, when the thunderclap sword technique was combined with the Yin water thunder, Lu Ping was still very satisfied with its power. Nanyu Laozu, who was in front of him, was momentarily forced into a fluster by this sudden explosive sword technique. However, Nanyu Laozu was, after all, a great Dharma adept. Although he had been caught off guard by Lu Ping's unexpected attacks, and if it had been any other cultivator of the same level, they would probably have been forced into a sorry state, or even seriously injured by Lu Ping. However, Nanyu Laozu only had to summon a jade scepter to block all of Lu Ping's thunder sword technique. The trump card that Lu Ping had carefully prepared was only to force out the treasure on this great Dharma adept. A jade scepter hovered above Patriarch Nanyu's head. Although it was also a first tribulation numinous treasure, it was in the hands of a grand cultivator. Its power could only be greater. It was so great that it could ignore the lightning divine ability of the thin water-flowing sword, which was also a first tribulation numinous treasure, and easily knock it away. Stubborn fool. The huge gap between the late Dharma stage and the mid-Dharma stage is no less than the gap between a cultivator and a cultivator. If Master Thunderclap had not repeatedly asked for mercy, the old man would not be someone you could challenge. However, the answer he got was two crisscrossing blades of light. Lu Ping held a pair of scissors in his hand, and a huge shadow of a Swanee leaped high into the air. A pair of large blades guided the two blades of light of heaven and earth towards Nanyu Laozu. The person in front of him seemed to have made up his mind and did not know what was good for him. He repeatedly challenged Nanyu Laozu's limits, and his methods became more and more vicious. At this point, even Nanyu Laozu did not dare to show his arrogance anymore. Second disaster spiritual treasure, the scissors cut in half. Chu Yi of the Northern Alliance died in your hands. The exclamation was almost the same as Li Shiqian's, but Nanyu Laozu's tone was more surprised than Li Shiqian's. The death of Chu Yi was only the prelude to the Northern Alliance's destruction. Many sects were more or less involved, especially those great cultivators, who were the driving force behind all this. Although the Yulin sect was not one of the 9 sects, as a great cultivator, Nanyu Laozu's identity and status clearly allowed him to know a lot of inside information. The mantis cut in half was able to make such a big name for itself in the world of cultivators. Naturally, it could not be just because he had been born in Wishing School. Although Nanyu Laozu was confident that his great cultivator's ability was enough to use a first disaster spiritual treasure to fight against the mantis cut in half, he did not dare to be the slightest bit negligent. The jade scepter hung high in the air and exploded into a ball of light. Then, the whole spiritual treasure began to expand, turning and smashing towards the top of Lu Ping's head. The spiritual treasure in Lu Ping's hand suddenly flipped over, but he gave up on attacking Nanyu Laozu. Instead, the two blades of light cut towards the jade scepter. Clang! A series of starlight flew up, and the two blades of light cut across the sky instantly dissipated. Lu Ping was hit by the huge force coming from the jade scepter and was forced to retreat. His right hand that was holding the scissors was numb. Meanwhile, the jade scepter in the sky also flew back to Nanyu Laozu's hand shakily. Looking at the series of dents carved on the jade scepter by the scissors, Nanyu Laozu's mouth trembled in pain. The jade scepter was Nanyu Laozu's beloved item. Nanyu Laozu had spent a lot of time and effort on this spiritual treasure. At present, he was preparing to help it overcome its second lightning tribulation. Unexpectedly, it had been cut in half. Who knew how much time and effort it would take to repair the damage? Nanyu Laozu was already furious. He pointed at Lu Ping and said, "Good, good. The old man has been trying to give way again and again, but you, sir, are reaching for a yard after taking an inch. Don't blame the old man for not showing mercy and shaming the Yuan family." Now that Lu Ping was blocked here, some cultivators in the dark void sea were already chasing after him. Lu Ping was vexed. However, the great cultivator in front of him was putting on airs with every move, explaining the cause and effect. Even when he was fighting against Lu Ping, it was the same. This made Lu Ping very angry. However, the great cultivator in front of him was a great cultivator. Even though Lu Ping had repeatedly caught him off guard and did not seem to be at a disadvantage during their few exchanges, it was not up to Lu Ping to act. Whether to fight or how to fight seemed to be decided by this Laozu. Lu Ping had the upper hand, but he could not take the initiative. If you want to fight, let's fight. Cut the crap! Lu Ping finally couldn't help but take the initiative to attack. His thin water-flowing sword, triggering huge waves of sword auras, lunged at Nanyu Laozu one after another. However, they turned into the drowning sword technique in midair, as if they were besieging Nanyu Laozu in the middle of Lu Ping's ever-changing sword techniques. The sword technique of raging waves hitting banks, the sword technique of thousand snow piles, the sword technique of great river flowing east, and several other sword techniques were constantly changing. Lu Ping used them to strangle Nanyu Laozu. In the meantime, a cluster of bluish-purple light was gathered in Lu Ping's hand and extended along the scissors in his hand. Then, two bluish-purple blade auras burst out and turned into two weird flood dragons, which suddenly cut at Nanyu Laozu, who was resisting Lu Ping's impenetrable attacks. Lu Ping used the second tribulation spiritual treasure scissors to perform the sword technique of green flood dragon disturbing the sea. Nanyu Laozu let out a strange cry. He didn't dare to face Lu Ping's attack head-on, nor did he dare to fight the spiritual treasure scissors head-on with his jade rui. He could only retreat. The two blade auras flashed at the place where Nanyu Laozu had just retreated, and a corner of his clothes fluttered in the wind. Lu Ping took advantage of the situation and stood up. The dual flying swords in his hands suddenly gathered thousands of sword auras, and then the swords spread out like a screen. Countless sword auras splashed out in the air, surging toward Nanyu Laozu. Nanyu Laozu had no choice but to step aside. Lu Ping was about to escape when he heard an exasperated roar behind him. "Don't let Wen Yuan get away! He just came out of Kongming Island!" Chapter 1146. "Don't let that Wen Yuan get away! He just came out of Kongming Island!" Upon hearing the shout, Lu Ping cursed inwardly. "Oh no!" Indeed, Nanyu Laozu, who had been forced to dodge Lu Ping's attack, heard this and his expression changed. He did not dodge, but instead leapt into the air and smashed towards Lu Ping's back. Seeing that he was about to escape, Lu Ping was furious. He had no choice but to turn around and block Nanyu Laozu's attack from behind. At the same time, he saw that the person chasing him was not Li Shiqian from the Crystal Palace, but another Dharma adept. After all, Lu Ping had just advanced to the mid-Dharma stage and had yet to fully adapt to his techniques. At this time, it would be good if he could use 70 to 80% of his abilities in a battle. But now, he was being entangled by a Dharma adept, and now, a mid-Dharma adept had come, which made Lu Ping even more furious. "Is that Nanyu Laozu from the Yulin sect? I am Guan Yu, a third-generation disciple of the Guanfa sect. This Mr. Wen Yuan from the Yuan family had entered Kongming Island before. The Kongming treasure might be in his hands. Please, Laozu, capture this person and let the other sects deal with him. When the time comes, your sect will definitely have a share of the treasures on Kongming Island. Cut the crap. Let's work together and kill this person first." Nanyu Laozu's face was as dark as still water as he shouted in a low voice. Guan Yu stared blankly for a moment, a strange expression on his face that seemed to say, "Senior, you must be joking. He was just a mid-Dharma adept. How could he make such a big fuss about it?" Then, he looked as if he had seen a ghost. This Mr. Wen Yuan was actually fighting with Nanyu Laozu so well. Although he was at a disadvantage, he was not completely suppressed. Instead, he was fighting while retreating. It seemed that if Nanyu Laozu was the slightest bit careless, the person in front of him would be able to escape from Nanyu Laozu's entanglement, and escape. Since when did a servant from the top family in Central Plains have such incredible abilities? This thought only flashed across Guan Yu's mind for a moment before he thought of the thunder trial on Kongming Island. The person before him was clearly only at the mid-Dharma stage. Could it be that the thunder trial back then was only a scene of him going through his first thunder trial? But the formation Grandmaster Wen Yuan had made a name for himself a long time ago, and was already a mid-Dharma adept. Then, who was the thunder trial on Kongming Island? Ding dang 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 dang. The sky was filled with the sounds of explosions. Countless swords were broken, and a jade ray was weaving in and out of the net of swords. Lu Ping's supreme swordsmanship was easily broken by Nanyu Laozu. However, in the hands of Lu Ping, this supreme swordsmanship was extremely powerful. Even Nanyu Laozu had no choice but to temporarily retreat. This gave Lu Ping the chance to escape. Guan Yu snapped out of his daze and threw out 3 short axes. The axes spun in the air and formed a huge whirlwind of axes. Countless axe lights rained down from the sky like raindrops and flew towards Lu Ping. Lu Ping, who was about to break away from the battle, was forced back again. The lineage of the Guangfa sect was a little strange. They followed the principle of one thought to create all techniques, which was very different from the one sword to destroy all techniques that Jiao Daoren was passionate about. The Guangfa sect believed that all techniques in the world were the same. Most of the techniques and supernatural powers in the world had a common principle. Therefore, if one could grasp and understand this common principle, then all the techniques in the world could be derived from it. Therefore, when the practitioners of the Guangfa sect battled, the most important thing was change. They had many different kinds of techniques. Once they battled, all kinds of techniques would change in a chaotic manner, making it hard for one's eyes to follow. It was like a kaleidoscope surging towards the opponent. When fighting with a practitioner of the Guangfa sect, if the person's magic weapon was a sword, then during the process of the battle, he would be attacked by a series of saber techniques, spear techniques, halberd techniques, or other kinds of techniques, but not a single sword technique was used. This was not strange at all. Guan Yu forced Lu Ping back. Nanyu Laozu was overjoyed and jumped forward. This time, Lu Ping was really trapped in a dangerous situation where he was attacked from both the front and the back. Alright, kid, let's see where you can run to this time. If you can take out the Kongming legacy, the old man can guarantee that no one in the Kongming legacy formation will give you a hard time today. How about it? This great practitioner saw that Lu Ping was completely suppressed by the two of them, so he immediately went back to being cute. However, he didn't know that Lu Ping was already filled with anger and wanted to vent. After all, you are a servant of the Yuan clan. Coincidentally, young Master Jinglei is a guest in our sect. If the old man and young Master Jinglei can vouch for you, not only will everyone give face to the old man, but they will also consider the Yuan clan behind you. Why do you have to risk your life like this? Lu Ping finally couldn't take it anymore and shouted. All of you can go to hell! The thin water-flowing sword flew back, and the 2 parts of the spiritual treasure disappeared from his hand. Instead, a golden 3 feet long sword floated above Lu Ping's head. The moment the sword appeared, the spiritual chi within a radius of several thousand feet was suddenly sealed. Then, with boundless wind and waves, the spiritual chi surged towards the floating sword, instantly forming a huge spiritual chi phenomenon. The moment the sword of true spirit appeared, the peerless aura that surged from the sword made it hard for Guan Yu to breathe. Nanyu Laozu also looked at the flying sword and was shaken. He shouted, "What sword is this? A sword that will take your life!" The moment Lu Ping reached out to hold the hilt, the spiritual chi in his body surged towards the sword as if it was boiling. A purple gold sword light suddenly shot out from the sword into the sky. The magnificent sword light cut through the sky, and the purple gold light dyed the twilight sky. It could be seen clearly within a radius of several dozen miles. A strange feeling filled Lu Ping's body. It was as if he could cut through the sky, pierce through the earth, and slaughter all living things in this world with a sword in hand. This was just a first catastrophe spiritual treasure flying sword. Nanyu Laozu threw the jade ray in his hand into the air. Although this flying sword gave him a sense of danger, he did not believe that a first catastrophe spiritual treasure in the hands of a mid-Dharma adept could pose a threat to him. However, he was wrong. Lu Ping slashed at Nanyu Laozu with the sword of true spirit in his hand. The sky-piercing sword light also slashed down, and the space that the sword light passed through shattered. Zheng! The tip of the sword of true spirit pointed down towards the sea, and the sky-piercing sword light suddenly disappeared. In the distance, Nanyu Laozu looked at Lu Ping expressionlessly, or perhaps he was looking at the sword of true spirit in Lu Ping's hand. Lu Ping looked up. The jade rui that was floating above Nanyu Laozu's head suddenly fell, and then suddenly broke in half in midair, crashing into the sea. The cut was so smooth that it shone with a jade-like luster. Then, the sound of silk ripping came from above Nanyu Laozu's head, and the protective layer that was formed by his treasured clothes was suddenly cut in half as the space broke. Then, the crack in the space continued to appear, and 9 layers of colorful lights split in 2. It was Nanyu Laozu's protective power that had been cut in half. Then, the space between Nanyu Laozu's eyes suddenly widened, and his whole body was cut in half from top to bottom, falling in 2 different directions. Then, the surface of the sea behind Nanyu Laozu suddenly exploded, and a gully that was hundreds of feet deep suddenly appeared. The seawater filled up the gully, and a tsunami that was dozens of feet high collided with each other. It was an earth-shattering scene. A series of explosions came from afar. The sky-piercing sword light had spread to the underworld void array, and in one fell swoop, the dozens of arrays inside and outside the underworld void array were all destroyed. The power of Mo Li's sword was so great. Guan Yu had long been scared stiff by Mo Li's power, but the threat of death did not allow him to feel the slightest sense of security, so he immediately understood and turned to run. Unexpectedly, Lu Ping only held the flying sword in his hand and stabbed forward slightly. Guan Yu, who was escaping, felt a chill in his heart, and then his consciousness was forever erased. However, the impact of Mo Li's sword was far from that. Just as Lu Ping slashed out with the sword of celestial spirit, the 9 foundational arrays of the underworld void array seemed to have been triggered, and they suddenly collapsed. Originally, after Lu Ping had left Underworld Void Island, the 9 foundational arrays that were like a blooming flower had gradually closed up. The Crystal Palace's array master, Yuan Trigram Laozu, was the first to rush into the 9 foundational arrays that had opened up the passageway. After that, all the cultivators who wanted to enter Underworld Void Island were all chased away by Yuan Trigram Laozu. Yuan Trigram Laozu held the fort by himself, and with his mid-Dharma stage cultivation, he was able to temporarily block all the cultivators who wanted to enter Underworld Void Island outside of the array. The Crystal Palace wanted everything on Underworld Void Island to belong to the Crystal Palace, and they did not even hesitate to offend all the cultivators in the Underworld Void Array. The 9 foundational arrays gradually closed up, and just as Yuan Trigram Laozu's plan was about to succeed, something that caused Yuan Trigram Laozu to collapse suddenly happened. The 9 foundational arrays suddenly collapsed, and the cultivators who wanted to enter Underworld Void Island but failed to do so were stunned. Yuan Trigram Laozu was also stunned. After that, everyone came to their senses and laughed strangely at Yuan Trigram Laozu. The light under their feet did not slow down at all, and they landed on Underworld Void Island. Although these cultivators did not take the opportunity to kill Yuan Trigram Laozu because of the Crystal Palace, this did not stop them from sneering at him. There was even a strong sense of mockery in their strange laughter, and some of the mean cultivators even made sarcastic remarks. Previously, Patriarch Yuan Trigram had been filled with lofty ambitions. He had single-handedly defended the passageway opened by the 9 foundation formations and engaged in a fierce battle with the cultivators within the Nether Void formation. As a result, he had already sustained injuries, and now that he was being ridiculed by everyone, all of his efforts had been for naught. As a result, his heart was instantly filled with rage and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Just as Yuan Trigram Laozu was in a daze, the cultivators from various sects had already rushed into Underworld Void Island. Yuan Trigram Laozu did not dare to delay any longer, and he hurriedly landed on Underworld Void Island despite his injuries. Just as Lu Ping had used the unbreakable sword to kill Nanyu Laozu, Lu Ping seemed to feel many movements related to the sword of the true spirit happening in more than 10 different places in the world of cultivation, as if they were welcoming or responding to the birth of the sword of the true spirit. Chapter 1147. Just as Mo Li killed Nanyu Laozu, somewhere in the void of the South China Sea, a beam of light suddenly broke through the shackles of space and condensed into the shadow of a three-legged, two-eared cauldron on the surface of the sea. Then, the shadow broke apart and turned into boundless creation spirit chi that spread over the sea. At this time, when the fish at the bottom of the sea and the birds in the sky flew past the spreading spirit chi, their eyes showed intelligence that was different from that of animals. Among them, a seabird with long legs and a sharp beak was particularly clever. After flying over the sea, it immediately circled and returned to the rapidly dissipating spirit chi, repeating this process over and over again. At the same time, huge waves appeared in many parts of the South China Sea. From time to time, huge islands would suddenly float up from the bottom of the sea, and many islands that had existed for God knows how many years suddenly began to shake and change direction. Amidst the long roars, ferocious and huge turtle heads stretched out from under these islands. These islands were actually sky hegemonic divine turtles that had been sleeping for God knows how many years. But the moment the three-legged, two-eared cauldron appeared, they all woke up. The huge turtles turned their bodies on the surface of the sea and slowly bowed their heads in the direction where the three-legged, two-eared cauldron had appeared. Then, some of the huge bodies that were several miles in circumference, or even larger, suddenly disappeared from the surface of the sea, or sank to the bottom of the sea with a loud bang. After that, the entire South China Sea returned to peace. However, the scene of countless sky hegemonic divine turtles floating on the surface of the sea and worshipping the cauldron still fell into the eyes of many cultivators of the South China Sea. As a result, the entire cultivation world of the South China Sea was shaken. From time to time, beams of light flashed above the residences of various clans and sects, exchanging information back and forth, but none of them knew what was going on. In the depths of the boundless mountains, a series of deafening cries rang out, almost causing half of the boundless mountains to fall silent. Then, 5 pillars of 5-colored light flashed and disappeared in the depths of the boundless mountains. As if responding to the 5 pillars of 5-colored light, on the other side of the boundless mountains, a huge cicada-shaped figure flashed and disappeared in the air. Although it was only a shadow, the moment it appeared, countless demon cultivators in the entire boundless mountains worshipped it. At the southeast edge of the North Ice Field, a sky-reaching mountain suddenly shook. Countless human-shaped giant apes circled around the mountain, and only then did the mountain stop shaking. An elderly ape with a head of white fur who had lived on the summit of the mountain for countless years slowly made his way over to the edge of the mountain, then said something to the giant apes that were clinging onto the mountain. Several tens of giant apes leaped down from the mountain, then flew toward the central plains as streaks of light. In the depths of the East Sea, 3 enormous whirlpools, each with a radius of 10 miles, suddenly formed. Vast amounts of seawater poured into these 3 whirlpools, but it was as if they had encountered 3 bottomless abysses. The enormous phenomenon lasted for a whole 2 hours before it slowly disappeared. Chu Fanyun floated above the surface of the sea and gazed toward the southeast. He muttered to himself, "What could it be? Who could it be?" The heavenly wall of myriad poisons in the perished mystery land suddenly shrank and expanded, then swayed like a huge roly-poly doll. In the end, it calmed down, leaving only the heavenly wall of myriad poisons, which shrank and expanded, leaving nothing but barren land and all the fish and shrimps it passed. The volcanoes on the Scarlet Mist Island in the North Sea erupted together, causing many casualties to the cultivators of the various sects stationed on the island. Then, nearly 100 spiritual fires of heaven and earth scattered in all directions as the volcanoes erupted. In order to fight for the spiritual fires of heaven and earth, the sects engaged in another chaotic battle, resulting in countless casualties. However, The moment the volcanoes on the Scarlet Mist Island erupted, in the depths of a volcano where the Fire Phoenix clan of the East Sea resided, several powerful experts of the Fire Phoenix clan sensed something. Not long after, several streaks of light set off from the Fire Phoenix clan's residence, heading toward the North Sea. Just as the 6 monstrous clans were in a state of turmoil, in the skies above the 5 holy lands of the Central Plains and the Crystal Palace, strange phenomena were occurring one after another. In the skies above the Skyward Pavilion, which was the closest to the South Sea, a thick layer of dark clouds covered the entire sky, causing the sun and the moon to lose their light. Fortunately, this phenomenon only appeared for a moment, and then the dark clouds disappeared. In the Lingyun Valley, which was close to the Endless Mountains, a blood-red light pierced through the heavens, illuminating half the sky. In the heartland of the Central Plains, a rainbow-colored storm of spiritual energy formed in the skies above the 9 mystical tower, between the Yulon River and the Qingming River. The storm wreaked havoc within a 10,000-kilometer radius of the 9 mystical tower, causing the spiritual energy in this area to be twice as dense as usual, causing many loose practitioners to cheer. The Violet Sun Palace was located in the western part of the Central Plains, between the Qingming River and the Yulon River. Not long after Lu Ping killed Nanyu Laozu, several sword cries rang out in the skies above the Violet Sun Palace. All the disciples of the Violet Sun Palace within a 10,000-kilometer radius unsheathed their flying swords. The hilts of their swords faced the Violet Sun Palace, while the tips of their swords pointed outwards. To the north of the 9 mystical tower, in the Wuxing School located in the middle reaches of the Yulon River, 5 towering streams of spiritual energy gathered in the center, gradually forming a giant cauldron made of spiritual energy. However, this cauldron looked more like a giant wine cup. At the same time, deep within a mountain in the heartland of the Central Plains, a similar phenomenon occurred in the skies above the Yuan clan. A river of lightning descended from the heavens, then disappeared into the depths of the mountains, not causing a single ripple. Outside the East Sea, amidst a series of shattering sounds, an enormous crystal hammer once more smashed downwards. Amidst yet another series of shattering sounds, the crystal hammer also disappeared from this crystalline land. In an indescribable place in the bitter cold northwest of the Central Plains, the roars of tigers rang out incessantly. The strange people who were walking around here all came to a strange halt, glanced in the direction of the roars, and then began to go their own ways. And at this moment, on a treasured ship thousands of miles away from the estuary of the Qingming River, the cultivators who had just crossed the stormy ocean were cheering and jumping on the treasured ship. A strange light suddenly burst out from the treasured ship, condensing into a piece of cloth in the air above the treasured ship, or perhaps it was more like a handkerchief. Many of the cultivators on the treasured ship were stunned by this phenomenon, and then the shadow of the handkerchief that was condensed from the light shattered. The cultivators on the treasured ship looked at each other, seemingly at a loss. However, there were also a few who had their eyes darting around, not knowing what to do in their hearts. Of course, Lu Ping did not know that in that instant, almost the entire cultivation world, be it the humans or demons, or all the major forces, had been alarmed. At this moment, he was still immersed in the shock of how easily he had killed a grand cultivator and a mid-dharma adept with 2 swords just now. Although the sword of the real spirit was now considered his personal treasure, it had only gone through one lightning tribulation after all, and its power was still so strong. Lu Ping was now more and more convinced that what he had obtained in the sacred lake was the horn of the real spirit that Jiao Daoren had begged Taoist Hu to refine into a flying sword, but was unable to obtain it, and had helplessly abandoned. Mo Li's power shocked Lu Ping, and even more so the other cultivators who had chased after Lu Ping. Lu Ping suddenly came to his senses, knowing that he was not out of danger yet. He looked down and searched through the storage artifacts of Nanyu Laozu and Guan Yu. Just as he was about to turn and leave, Lu Ping seemed to have thought of something. He reached into the sea, and the reed jade that had been cut in two by the sword of the real spirit immediately flew out of the sea. Just a piece of jade was able to grow all the way to a first calamity spiritual treasure. Obviously, this piece of jade was not simple. Even though it had been cut in two and the spiritual treasure's weapon spirit had long been destroyed, it was still a treasure that was hard to come by. On Kongming Island, the cultivators from the various sects who had swarmed in finally began a chaotic battle. After Lu Ping left, the battle became even more intense. Ever since the Five Elements tortoise appeared in the South Sea, the disaster of Mara had broken out on a large scale in the South Sea. One of the four major sects in the South Sea, the Honghai Pavilion, which was closest to the Five Elements tortoise, was the first to suffer. One of the two great cultivators in the sect had died while defending against Mara's attack, and 5 or 6 of the other Dharma adepts had also been drowned by Mara's army. If it were not for the reinforcements from the Yuan family, led by Yuan Jinglei, who had arrived in time, this major sect that had stood in the South Sea for thousands of years might have even been wiped out. Even so, after Mara's army had retreated, the Honghai Pavilion, which had long been in shambles, would no longer be able to maintain its position as one of the four major sects under the leadership of only one great cultivator. After that, Mara's army once again gathered and surrounded the Yulin sect. This sect, which had always maintained a low profile in the South Sea, finally stopped concealing its strength in this moment of life and death. Even though the Yulin sect had fallen into Jinling's trap in the fallen secret territory and lost 2 third-generation Dharma adepts, the overall strength of the Yulin sect had been reduced to almost nothing. The 3 great cultivators of the Yulin sect, as well as the 18 Dharma adepts of the entire sect working together, actually managed to fend off the attack of Mara's army in one fell swoop. After that, Yuan Jinglei led the cultivators from the Yuan family, and the 2 families worked together to repel Mara's army. The Yulin sect had only lost 1 mid-Dharma adept and 2 early Dharma adepts. Originally, the Yulin sect had repelled Mara's army with the help of the Yuan family, and the entire Yulin sect was very grateful to the Yuan family. Unexpectedly, at this time, bad news came from Kongming Island. The great cultivator of the Yulin sect, Nanyu Laozu, had actually fallen at the hands of Wen Yuan, a formation master of the Yuan family. At the same time, the third-generation elite Dharma adept of the Guangfa sect, Qing Guanyu, had also been killed, and Wen Yuan was nowhere to be found. The Yulin sect and the Yuan family had fallen out with each other, and the Guangfa sect had also sent a cultivator to interrogate Yuan Jinglei. Even though Yuan Jinglei had tried his best to explain, everyone knew that there were many suspicious points and flaws in the story. Most importantly, with Wen Yuan's mid-Dharma level, how could he have killed Nanyu Laozu? Could it be that Wen Yuan was a second Xiao Baiyu? Then, everyone thought of the thunder clouds that had been hanging over Kongming Island for more than a year. Could it be that Wen Yuan had obtained some kind of earth-shattering spirit treasure on the island that allowed him to kill a late Dharma adept in one fell swoop? Not long after, news came from the Yuan family of the Central Plains that Wen Yuan's soul lamp had been extinguished more than a decade ago, which meant that the Wen Yuan who had appeared on Kongming Island that day was someone else in disguise. Chapter 1148. It was said that the Crystal Palace's Yuan Gua, Laozu, had accidentally killed himself on Kongming Island because he had angered the crowd. Afterwards, the Crystal Palace's second disciple, Li Shiqian, had gone berserk and massacred all the cultivators who had entered the island. There were many Dharma adepts present at the time, but no one was able to stop him. It was not until the Guangfa clan, Talisman Pavilion, Lu Yun sect, and Yulin sect heard the news and rushed over that they joined forces to subdue this disciple of the Crystal Palace. No one dared to offend the Crystal Palace. Although more than a dozen cultivators had died at Li Shiqian's hands, many of them were masters of spell formations from various sections. However, none of them dared to speak up. In the end, the few masters had no choice but to inform the Crystal Palace to come to the South Sea to collect their people. The masters of these 4 sects had rushed over. Apart from the collapse of the 9 foundation formations on Kongming Island had become completely open to all cultivators. Naturally, they were also here for Wen Yuan. The death of Nanyu Laozu and the appearance of the 2 broken treasures were enough to attract them. As for the other large sect, the Honghai Pavilion, they were no longer qualified to be called a large sect. Therefore, although the incident on Kongming Island had shocked the entire South Sea cultivation world, not a single cultivator from the Honghai Pavilion had appeared. In the end, the Kongming array was preserved under the strong request of the masters of the various sections. The spirit veins on the island were also not removed. Unfortunately, the 9 foundation formations had collapsed and dissipated. The masters of the various sects had tried their best but could only preserve about 70% of the remaining formations. The rest had either been destroyed by the collapse of the foundation formations or had been destroyed in the previous battle. At this time, the Yuan family had not yet spread the news that Wen Yuan had died more than 10 years ago. The entire South Sea cultivation world was looking for Wen Yuan, the master of spell formations. There were even rumors that Wuxing School had sent people to the southern coast of Central Plains after hearing about the appearance of the 2 broken treasures. At this time, Lu Ping had already changed his appearance. After that, he suppressed his cultivation all the way to the late stage of the core forging realm. After that, he spent enough spirit stones and used the excuse of traveling to the central region to exchange for a slot in the ultra-long-distance transmission array from the Charm Pavilion. With Lu Ping's current level of attainment in the deception technique, even late Dharma adepts would not be able to see through his true identity. Previously, when he was battling Nanyu Laozu in the dark space sea, no one had been able to see through him. After the light of the teleportation array flashed, Lu Ping reappeared in the Magic Cloud Ancient City in the southern part of Middle-earth. The Magic Cloud Ancient City was a city where practitioners gathered. At the same time, it was also the base of a large sect. The name of this sect was Magic Cloud City. It was a sect that had a close relationship with the Lingyun Valley, one of the 5 holy lands of Middle-earth. At the same time, it was also the destination of the ultra-long-distance transmission array from the Charm Pavilion to Middle-earth. The Magic Cloud Ancient City was about 20,000 miles southeast of the Lingyun Valley. To the south, the endless mountains stretched from the northwest to the southeast and formed a border with Middle-earth. This was roughly a parallel line between the Lingyun Valley and the Magic Cloud Ancient City. The parallel line of the endless mountains continued to the southeast until it reached the edge of the South Sea, where the estuary of the Qingning River was located. On the other side of the estuary of the Qingning River was the base of another holy land of Middle-earth, the Skyward Pavilion. The Lingyun Valley, the Magic Cloud Ancient City, and the Skyward Pavilion roughly formed the same straight line from the northwest to the southeast, facing the endless mountains. Going up along the estuary of the Qingning River, the lower reaches of the Qingning River happened to roughly follow the straight line from the Skyward Pavilion to the Magic Cloud Ancient City. Then, turning north near the Magic Cloud Ancient City, all the way to the hinterland of Middle-earth, around the 9 Mystical Tower. This was the middle reaches of the Qingning River. Here, turning west, all the way to the south of the Western Wilderness, the source of the Qingning River, this section was the upper reaches. Lu Ping's original plan was to swim in the Qingning River and feel the imposing manner of the largest river in Middle-earth to perfect the Great River Flows East Sword technique. That had been modified by Lu Ping. The only pity was that it appeared in the Magic Cloud Ancient City, which made it feel a little awkward. As soon as Lu Ping came out of the teleportation formation, he immediately heard someone arguing in the other side of the teleportation formation. When Lu Ping looked over, he realized that this teleportation formation was used to teleport people out of Magic Cloud City. Why? Why did you close the teleportation formation at this time? The old man and the others are still in a hurry to go to Wooding Sect to save people. Won't your delay kill people? That's right, that's right. I'm still in a hurry to report to my sect Laozu. Can you afford to be late? Hurry up and open the teleportation formation. We are still in a hurry to meet up with our friends. Do you want us to fly all the way there? I will increase the price by 5 more upper spirit stones. Is that okay? Why is the teleportation formation to Magic Cloud City still open, but the teleportation formation to leave is closed? Everyone suddenly fell silent. When they looked at the teleportation formation that Lu Ping had come from, they found that the teleportation formation there was still open, and the teleportation light had not stopped. Could it be? I think everyone has already guessed it. A mid-Dharma adept suddenly appeared in the sky above the teleportation formation, followed by 3 early Dharma adepts. Seeing that the adepts outside the teleportation formation had all noticed them, the adept continued. The rules of the world of cultivation have always been that as long as there is a beast-tide attack or a siege by Mara, the teleportation formation allows people to enter, but not to leave. What else do you have to say? The adepts near the teleportation formation were silent at first, and then there was an uproar. Some complained, some cursed, and some remained silent. A loud shout came from the crowd, saying, Senior Gu Xing, is it the beast-tide from Endless Mountain, or is it Mara's siege? The noise in the crowd suddenly stopped, and they heard Laozu, the mid-Dharma adept, say in a deep voice, It is the disaster of Mara, and it is less than half a day away from Magic Cloud City. At this moment, everyone should hurry up and get ready to defend Magic Cloud City. Of course, if there is really an emergency, you can still fly out of the city now, but be careful of the traces of Mara's army on the way. Although the crowd looked angry, they still walked away quickly while cursing. The other teleportation formation to Magic Cloud City was still open, and after a flash from time to time, one or a few adepts would appear. Soon, they also learned that the teleportation formation had been closed because of the siege by Mara. They could not help but curse their bad luck, but no one complained about the closure of the teleportation formation to leave Magic Cloud City. Whether humans or demons, mortals or adepts, it was always human nature to seek advantages and avoid disadvantages. In the past, when the disaster of Mara broke out, every time a sect or a city was besieged by Mara, many adepts would try to leave through the teleportation formation to avoid the siege of Mara's army. They would wait until the siege of Mara's army was lifted before returning to avoid the possible disaster, or if the place was simply destroyed by Mara, they would be even more glad that they had chosen to leave. However, it was undeniable that when the siege of Mara's army arrived, these adepts who escaped through the teleportation formation not only drove more people to leave, but also weakened the strength of the defense, and also shook the determination of the adepts who stayed to resist the invasion of Mara. Later, when the invasion of Mara's army arrived, some sects would forcibly close the teleportation formation, cutting off the adepts' means of escape, forcing these people to stay and join the resistance against Mara's invasion. However, this method of coercion was opposed by many people in the beginning. Although there was nothing they could do for a time, the people who had survived Mo Luo's invasion began to feel enmity toward this sect. The friends and family of the people who had fallen blamed the reason for their deaths on the sect that had adopted this method, causing them to suffer endless retaliation from all kinds of enemies. Even though these people knew that in that dangerous situation, cutting off the teleportation formation was the only way to survive, everyone could understand it, but when it came to the actual action, no one could accept it. This continued until another sect had no choice but to cut off the teleportation formation when the disaster of Mara descended. At that time, it aroused resistance from the adepts who had stayed in the sect. Before the arrival of Mara's army, internal strife had already begun. In the end, they were completely annihilated under the siege of Mara's army. After that, the 5 holy lands of the Central Plains, the Yuan family, and the Crystal Palace of the East Sea jointly announced to the cultivation world that when the disaster of Mara descended, they would support the sects and clans to cut off the teleportation formation, allowing entry but not exit. In the face of a great enemy, they should unite against a common enemy. If there was any difficulty, they would become enemies with the entire cultivation world. Reason was conveyed through background, and customs were fostered through strength. After the 6 great holy lands and the Yuan family had joined hands to support the sects and forces that had cut off the teleportation portal in the encirclement of the evil Luo army, punishing those individuals, groups, and forces that had failed to escape in the face of danger and started internal strife, the atmosphere of the entire cultivation world had suddenly changed. This kind of rule of allowing people to enter but not leave in the face of danger had finally been established. If something like this happened again, the trapped cultivators could only blame their own bad luck. However, this so-called rule of allowing entry but not exit only referred to the teleportation formation. If there were cultivators who were willing to fly away before Mara completely surrounded them, these sects and forces could not stop them. However, unless there was a really urgent matter, or if they had absolute confidence in their own strength, no one would fly out of the city on the eve of Mara's siege, because it was very likely that they would be surrounded by Mara's army from all directions. At this time, Lu Ping leisurely left Magic Cloud Ancient City after the cultivators at the gate of the ancient city tried to persuade him but to no avail. At the same time, outside a dense forest hundreds of miles south of Magic Cloud Ancient City, a Mara team wandering in the southeast direction was suddenly caught unprepared by an attack in the dense forest. The attack was ferocious, but it was not fatal. Moro's troops were scattered in an instant, and then they retreated towards the north as if they were being driven away. That direction was exactly where Magic Cloud City was, which Moro's army was going to surround. Chapter 1149. At the same time, the same scene was happening in different directions hundreds of miles around Magic Cloud City. Groups of Mara troops that were wandering around were constantly forced to the direction of Magic Cloud City, causing the Mara army that was originally surrounding Magic Cloud City to grow stronger. Shortly after Lu Ping left, the teleportation array in Magic Cloud City burst into white light again. The Shangyun sect practitioners who stayed behind were delighted. Looking at the teleportation light, they knew that it was definitely a group of people. At this time, Magic Cloud City was being besieged by Mara. Naturally, they hoped that more people would come. With more people, the defensive power of Magic Cloud City would increase. After the light flashed, the practitioners of Shangyun's sect saw more than a dozen people in the teleportation array and were stunned. They thought to themselves, even the Lingyun Valley is so close, and the two families have such a close relationship, but no one came. They came too fast, and the news was really timely. It could be seen that among the dozen people, there were 5 or 6 Dharma adepts, which was obviously an extremely powerful force. He put on an overjoyed expression and said, "But in the presence of the seniors of the Yuan family, I am a disciple of Shangyun's sect. Please wait a moment, I will only greet the Laozu of my sect." The group of people from the Yuan family was led by a young man, but his cultivation was in the middle Dharma stage. He nodded and said with a smile, "In that case, thank you, my friend. Just say that I am Yuan Ke, my cousin Yuan Jinglei, and the disciples of the Yuan family pay their respects to the governor and deputy governor of Magic Cloud City." Lu Ping asked for directions when he left the city, and then flew to the southeast of Qiming River. Although traces of Mara had been found around Magic Cloud City, they had not formed an encirclement yet. With Lu Ping's current strength, he was quite confident that he could rush out before Mara's army surrounded him. Unexpectedly, before Lu Ping could walk for more than 10 miles, a group of Mara's troops suddenly dashed towards him. There were about 100 of them, and they were led by a blood Azura and a blood demon. Lu Ping cursed his bad luck. The thin water-flowing sword was already circling around his body, while the invisible water sword was hidden somewhere. When he got closer, Lu Ping realized that something was wrong with Mara's group. It didn't seem like they were joining up with Mara's army. Instead, it seemed like there was a terrifying existence chasing after them, and they were running for their lives. This was strange. Could it be that someone was chasing after Mara's team? Lu Ping's twin flying swords whistled out. He didn't care whether Mara's group was someone else's prey or not. In the cultivation world, it was everyone's responsibility to kill Mara. The moment the twin flying swords were shot out, the oncoming Mara's team naturally saw Lu Ping's presence. The Blood Azura was the first to raise the companion's spiritual treasure in his hand to meet Lu Ping's twin flying swords. The other blood demon also blew a breath at Lu Ping and attacked first. Soul-devouring chilly wind. If they were blown by it, Those with weak cultivation would be directly blown away and their divine thoughts would turn into idiots. Even if their divine thoughts were at the same level, if they could not avoid it, their divine thoughts would often be damaged. Unfortunately, it had encountered Lu Ping, whose divine thoughts were even stronger than those great cultivators who did not focus on cultivating their divine thoughts. Lu Ping didn't even need to use the cloud sail's power. The soul-devouring wind slammed into a wall, and suddenly, clusters of emerald green flames burst out from the wall, emerald soul fire. The sudden scream from behind startled the blood azura, who was pouncing towards Lu Ping. Then, he saw a series of flashes of light above his head, and the thin water-flowing sword slashed down from the sky. Crack! The blood azura's expression suddenly changed. His body, which was originally pouncing forward, quickly flew backward. In midair, he saw that his companion's spiritual treasure had been cut in half by a flying sword. The quality of the blood azura's companion's spiritual treasure was equivalent to that of the thin water sword, a first tribulation spiritual treasure, but it had been cut in half by Lu Ping. This showed how much power the thin water sword contained under Lu Ping's control. One sword? What about the other sword? This human cultivator should be using a pair of flying swords. A beam of light exploded in front of his chest, and a flying sword pierced out from the light. Under the blood azura's incredulous gaze, it hit his chest. An earth-shattering scream rang out, scaring the two Mara and Mara teams who had rushed over. Then they saw the flying sword that had cut in half the companion's spiritual treasure, and the blood azura's head flew high into the air. At the same time, the other blood demon, who had been given a taste of his own medicine by Lu Ping, was still holding his head and howling. Even the yellow skull-shaped companion's spiritual treasure in his hand had been thrown aside. The various soul-devouring spells of the demonic cultivators were specifically targeted at divine thoughts. Their methods were strange and often impossible to guard against. However, once the spell was broken by a cultivator with powerful means, the counterattack could often cause the spell to backfire on the user. Moreover, Lu Ping's methods were even more ruthless. Although the blood demon had been backfired on by the spell, it still retained a trace of intelligence, and had been paying attention to Lu Ping. Suddenly it noticed that after its companion had been killed, Lu Ping had smiled at it. Following that, a huge force came, and these Maras immediately fell into the bonfire like they were riding on clouds and riding on mist. A beautiful little girl with peach blossoms on her head turned around from behind a big tree, raised her head, smiled slightly, and waved at Lu Qiner, who was flying in the sky. As for continuing to break through, these Mara shuddered when they saw the way that Mara was turned into ashes with a faint smile. Lu Ping just stood in front with his hands behind his back, and none of the Mara wanted to break through from his side. Hum! 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 Just as the group of demonic auras were trapped by these few people and had no way out, a large swarm of demonic bees descended from the sky like a purple crystal cloud. The fist-sized amethyst bees formed an array formation in midair, covering Mo Luo within it. In the center of the array formation, a 1.5-foot tall little girl with a pair of wings on her back hovered in midair, seemingly directing the operation of the array formation. It was the amethyst bee Dao Soldier array formation that Lu Ping had refined many times. Deng Ming smiled and walked in front of Lu Ping, saying, "It's like breaking dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. These followers of Senior Brother are really enviable. A few of them joined forces and completely wiped out this group of more than 100 Mara, but using the legendary purple crystal bees as the Dao Soldier formation is really a bit extravagant." Lu Ping shrugged his shoulders and said, "No matter what, Senior Brother has been helping to train the Dao Soldier formation these days, so you must know that the purple crystal bees are considered to be an extremely high-quality Dao Soldier species." Deng Ming smiled and said, "That's true." When the purple crystal bee Dao Soldier formation dispersed, this group of more than 100 Mara led by the two blood Mara were all killed by Lu Ping and the others. This made the corner of Deng Ming's eye twitch. It must be known that the combination of a blood azura and a blood demon was something that even a mid-Dharma adept would have to avoid. With this group of more than 100 Mara of various sizes, it was more than enough to wipe out a small force with the Dharma adept. However, he did not expect that they would be wiped out so easily by Lu Ping and his 7 or 8 followers. Lu Ping looked at the surrounding forest and said, "Let's go!" In the blink of an eye, the group flew in the southeast direction and disappeared. The forest once again returned to silence. After a while, footsteps suddenly came from the forest. A middle Dharma adept with a feather on his head came out from the forest. He looked at the melting corpse of Mara in the open space, and a look of surprise flashed across his face. He then clapped his hands and said to the surrounding forest, "All of you come out!" The sound of footsteps rang out from within the forest once more. 3 cultivators, both male and female, clad in luxurious clothes, walked out from the forest. Every one of them possessed a cultivation base at the Dharma characteristic stage. Looking at Mo Luo's corpse that was on the verge of melting away, it was unknown what they were thinking. "Tell me, what do you think?" the middle-aged adept asked the 4 young adepts without any expression. Chapter 1150. It took us a lot of effort to drive this group of Mara here to meet up with the Mara army that was besieging Magic Cloud City. Now that they have been killed for no reason, we have to teach them a lesson. One of the young girls shouted angrily. "Are you stupid? How far have we driven these demonic auras away from us? Not even the time it takes to drink a cup of tea. In such a short time, they killed 2 blood Mara and hundreds of Mara groups. How can the 4 of us provoke such strength?" Another young cultivator said disdainfully. The young girl was not convinced and said, "Don't we still have Uncle Zhong Chang? As long as Uncle Zhong Chang takes action, we will definitely make this group of people suffer. We will also let them know the consequences of provoking us in the peacock race." Cough, cough. The middle-aged cultivator, Yang Zhongchang, blushed and interrupted the young girl's words. He said, "It was the same person who killed those 2 blood Mara, and he did it in less time than the time it takes to drink a cup of tea. After that, this person has been waiting for his subordinates to deal with those small Mara." What? How could it be? It was Uncle Zhong Chang who took action. Could it be that the person is a great cultivator? The 4 young boys and girls could not believe it. Yang Zhongchang coughed again and said with a slightly embarrassed expression, "If it was me, it would be impossible to kill 2 blood Mara in such a short time. Moreover, demonic cultivators and Shura cultivators are often difficult to deal with when they work together. Also, I want to tell you that the person who took action is the same as me. He is also at the mid-Dharma stage." The 4 of them exclaimed again. Another young girl said, "A cultivator of the same stage as us is even more powerful than Uncle Zhong Chang." "Impossible. Who is that person?" another young boy asked. "How many subordinates did he bring?" Yang Zhongchang shook his head and said, "That person is very cautious. There is always a faint layer of fog around him. It doesn't matter if you are close, but if you peek from a distance, it will become a fog and you can't see his face clearly. However, this person's swordsmanship is excellent, probably not inferior to the 6 swords of the Ziyang Palace. Although his subordinates are only at the core forging stage, they are very powerful. And the group of demonic Bidao soldiers at the end, there is something strange about them, but they are always shrouded in fog, making it hard to tell." The 4 young boys and girls looked at each other and finally looked at Yang Zhongchang. One of the young girls said, "Uncle Zhongchang, what should we do? Has that person already noticed our plan?" Yang Zhongchang pondered for a moment and said, "This time, our tribe is adding fuel to the fire against the Lingyun Valley behind Magic Cloud City. This matter is our tribe's revenge against the Lingyun Valley. After this, we are not afraid of what others will say. Now that the Mara army has besieged Magic Cloud City, the loss of our Mara team will not affect the siege. Even if that person figures out our intention, it is too late now." After saying this, Yang Zhongchang seemed to be more certain of his judgment and said, "Let's meet up with the other clansmen and leave here for the time being. This time, Magic Cloud City will definitely be destroyed. This is the price that the Lingyun Valley has to pay for daring to plot against our princess." Shortly after the four people left, Lu Ping, who had already left, suddenly flashed out from a giant tree at the edge of the forest, accompanied by Lu Taohua and Deng Ming. Lu Ping scratched Lu Taohua's head approvingly. Deng Ming, who was next to him, said in surprise, "The peacock race drove the Mara army to besiege Magic Cloud City. What are they thinking? Aren't they afraid of offending the public?" Lu Ping looked in the direction in which the five people had left and said, "It's not the peacock race that drove them away, but the Mara army was originally heading for Magic Cloud City. The peacock race just added fuel to the fire, driving some scattered Mara teams into the main army, so that the strength of the Mara army besieging Magic Cloud City will be greatly increased." Deng Ming did not understand and said, "What's the difference? After all, they helped the Mara army." Lu Ping smiled and said, "That depends on how they say it. In fact, we've seen it for ourselves. The Peacock clan cultivators are indeed chasing Mo Luo like he's running for his life. If they say that they're besieging Mo Luo, who can say anything about it? At most, they did something bad with good intentions." Deng Ming clicked his tongue and asked, "The Peacock race and the Lingyun Valley were in an uproar because of the attack on the Princess of Five Elements. The whole cultivation world was alarmed, but Magic Cloud City is a large sect after all. What does the Peacock race have to do with Magic Cloud City and the Lingyun Valley?" Lu Ping explained with a smile. "We have to talk about the relationship between Magic Cloud City and the Lingyun Valley. The 6 holy lands of the human tribe, including the Crystal Palace, had a long history of inheritance. It had not been long since the 7th Patriarch opened the sky. At that time, the cultivation world was far from as prosperous as it was now, and the 6 holy lands had not dominated the world as they did now. At that time, in order to expand their own sphere of influence, the 6 holy lands would often send their own direct disciples, who were not the top ones, to the edge of their own sphere of influence in the name of establishing a new force to expand their own sphere of influence. This was the origin of Magic Cloud City. The founder of Magic Cloud City, Lao Tzu, was a direct disciple of the Lingyun Valley. He established Magic Cloud City here. After tens of thousands of years of inheritance, Magic Cloud City had become a powerful large sect in the southern part of the central land. However, at this time, Magic Cloud City was no longer completely under the command of the Lingyun Valley. It had been in a semi-independent state, but it was still one of the most important strongholds of the Lingyun Valley to defend against the Demon Clan in the Endless Mountains. When Mara's army besieged Magic Cloud City, the Peacock royalty took out this stronghold, which could be said to be killing 3 birds with 1 stone. It not only eradicated a nail that held the expansion of the Demon Clan in the Endless Mountains, but also weakened the power of the Lingyun Valley and avenged the Princess of 5 Elements. Nurture a large sect? The Lingyun Valley is really generous. Aren't they afraid that these sects will eventually get rid of their control? Deng Ming obviously found it hard to believe. Lu Ping smiled and said, "I was also shocked when I first learned about these things. In fact, the expansion mode adopted by the 6 holy lands in the beginning did cause the problem you mentioned. The 6 holy lands thought that although the cultivators they sent were excellent, they were not the best. However, they did not know that everyone's fate was different, and their future achievements might not necessarily be unable to change. Some of these cultivators were loyal, and some were ambitious. Some eventually established sects and forces to help the sect master expand the Holy Land's sphere of influence, while some failed, died, or returned to their sects dejectedly. However, some of these successfully established sects and forces appeared to be in harmony with the Holy Land from the beginning. They hoped to completely get rid of the Holy Land's control, establish a perfect inheritance system, and become the master of the sect. Some of them initially supported the Holy Land, but as the inheritance was perfected and time passed, the sense of belonging of the cultivators to the Holy Land became weaker and weaker. On the contrary, they became more and more dissatisfied with the large amount of support the Holy Land received from their own sects, and their desire to be independent became stronger. Either way, there would eventually be a huge conflict with the 6 Holy Lands, which would eventually explode. After that, the 6 Holy Lands had to pay a huge price to start cleaning up the forces that had split from their own sections. In fact, after the 6 Holy Lands, a considerable number of the first batch of large sects that were born in the cultivation world were forces that had split from the 6 Holy Lands. After the 6 Holy Lands cleaned up the remaining large sects, their strength had either reached the point where the sect master would be afraid to attack them, or they had once again turned to the sect master and became their loyal tools to preserve their inheritance. The former completely got rid of the Holy Land's control and inherited their inheritance, while the latter were even more tightly controlled by the Holy Land. Do such large sects still exist in the cultivation world today? Lu Ping said. Yes, but not many. The former are like Purple Talisman Pavilion and Gale Thunder Island, which are controlled by the Crystal Palace, and Western Wilderness Palace often follows in the footsteps of the Purple Sun Palace. The latter are like Tianxian Sect to Wishing School, Skyren to Purple Sun Palace, and several sects in the South China Sea. They more or less have some relationship with the Holy Land in central China. Tianxian Sect? Skyrend? Now, these are all top large sects with pure Yang Laozu in charge. They're actually independent from the 6 Holy Land? Lu Ping nodded and said, although it's hard to believe, it's the truth. Deng Ming chuckled and then asked, so the Magic Cloud City is one of the more obedient extensions of the Lingyun Valley? Lu Ping nodded, then shook his head and said, yes and no. The Magic Cloud City is a bit special. The Magic Cloud City was about to be eradicated by the Lingyun Valley, mainly because of the threat of the Demon Clan in the Endless Mountain. In the end, the Lingyun Valley had to keep this large sect. It can be said that it is in a semi-independent state. Deng Ming sighed and said, I didn't expect that. Lu Ping also sighed and said, the 7th Patriarch's speech of opening heaven left a cultivation method, but the rise of large and small sects, as well as the current prosperity of the cultivation world, although the 6 Holy Land is unwilling to do so, from the results, we have to say that they deserve a lot of credit. After a pause, Lu Ping continued, if the 6 Holy Land was established at the beginning, it might not be difficult to find some independent inheritance system, except for the 6 Holy Land. But after tens of thousands of years of integration and development, it is extremely difficult for any sect in the cultivation world to find an inheritance system that is completely free from the imprint of the 6 Holy Land. If you think about it carefully, I'm afraid that only the inheritance of the Yuan clan can be confirmed. Oh, maybe the inheritance of the Kongming sect's formation is also one of them. Deng Ming shook his head and said, Senior brother Lu, where did you learn all this? Lu Ping laughed and looked ahead, then said, we have arrived at the Qiming River. The Qiming River had not yet appeared in their sight, but the crashing sound of waves could already be heard from afar. Chapter 1151. After the two of them left the forest, they rode on the Blue Phoenix. As they spoke, they could vaguely hear the rumbling of the Qingming River in midair. Deng Ming saw that Lu Ping was evasive about how he knew these secrets, but he was not disappointed. He knew that these things probably involved some of his qualifications, so he straightened his expression and was about to say something when he suddenly heard Lu Ping shout, be careful! Deng Ming's heart skipped a beat. He didn't know where the danger was coming from. Just as he was at a loss for what to do, a strong force suddenly came from behind and pressed him onto the Cyan Luan's back. Then, he heard Lu Qina's angry cry and Lu Ping's shout. Lone Eagle Clan, how dare you! Among the earth-shaking sword cry, a shrill cry sounded and a huge wind almost blew Deng Ming off the back of Lu Qina. Fortunately, Lu Ping, who was sitting cross-legged next to him, stretched out a hand and placed it on his shoulder, stabilizing him. After a while, the wind calmed down, and Deng Ming raised his head. Lu Qina was still flying in the sky, but the circle of feathers under her neck had not completely calmed down. Obviously, Lu Qina had been frightened just now. Deng Ming looked at Lu Ping and saw that he was looking back in the direction of Magic Cloud City. Deng Ming did not understand and asked, "What's going on?" Lu Ping's expression was calm, and no one knew what he was thinking. He answered, "It's a Lone Eagle Clan's Dharma adept. It looks like he's heading for Qin Air. I've already defeated him, but it looks like he's also heading for Magic Cloud City." Because Lu Ping had concealed his cultivation to the core forging stage, and Deng Ming and Lu Qina were both at the late stage of the core forging stage, they were targeted by the Lone Eagle. Unexpectedly, in the end, Lu Ping kicked an iron plate and retreated awkwardly. "Lone Eagle?" A strange expression appeared on Deng Ming's face as he said, "This race has always been solitary. For them to appear in Magic Cloud City at this critical juncture, could it be that they're targeting the Peacock royalty?" A strange smile appeared on Lu Ping's face and he said, "Maybe they are cooperating with the Peacock royalty." "Cooperation?" Deng Ming seemed to be listening to a joke and said, "How is that possible? Everyone in the cultivation world knows that the Lone Eagle is the enemy of all the direct descendants of Ping Daoren in the Demon Clan. The Peacock royalty is the most powerful of the direct descendants of Ping Daoren." Lu Ping did not refute what Deng Ming said. If he had not seen the Lone Eagle Ingli become the fiancé of the Peacock royalty princess in the Five Elements turtle, even Lu Ping would have thought that what he had just said was just a joke. The Qingming River came from the north, turned to the southeast hundreds of miles away from Magic Cloud City, and then rushed all the way to the sea. In fact, many people in the cultivation world believe that Magic Cloud City should have been built along the Qingming River, which was only hundreds of miles away. If it was built along the Qingming River, perhaps Magic Cloud City would become more prosperous. Otherwise, there would be no need to dredge a canal to connect Magic Cloud City with the Qingming River. When the Charm Pavilion was promoted to a large sect, the treasure ship went along the Qingming River and then turned to Magic Cloud City through this canal. Lu Ping and the others had also flown all the way to the Qingming River along this canal. On the Qingming River, Lu Ping had been riding on a black tortoise for more than half a month. Compared with the Yulin River, the biggest difference between the Qingming River and the Yulin River was the difference in speed. The Yulin River was only turbulent in the upper reaches. In the middle and lower reaches, the river was wide and the water was smooth. On both sides of the river, huge alluvial plains were formed. But the Qingming River was different. The upper and lower reaches of the Qingming River had a great difference in terrain, and the water was quite turbulent. Only the middle reaches were flat, and the water flows slowed down, forming a wide plain. Once again, an undetectable brilliance flashed in the sky. If it were not for Lu Ping, who had a strong divine sense, he would not have been able to notice that there was a cultivator flying in the sky just now. Lu Ping looked at the river and asked, "You three, tell me, how many people have we met along the way? How many people have we met? If you guess correctly, there will be a reward." A huge white snake suddenly floated up from the bottom of the river, and its huge body swam around Lu Dagui in a big circle. The ripples made by the snake even made Lu Dagui's body, which was now 60 or 70 feet long, sway back and forth. The white snake spoke, and it was the voice of Lu Linger. She said, "Father, what is the reward this time?" "Oh," Lu Ping said, "let me see." After saying that, he lowered his head and rummaged through his storage artifact. Lu Ping had consecutively killed Wen Yuan, Nan Yu, and Guan Yu in the South China Sea. These three people were all influential figures in their respective sects, and naturally, they were rich. This was especially so for Nanyu Laozu. As one of the three late Dharma adepts of the Yulin sect, his wealth could no longer be described as rich. Even the hundreds of top-grade spirit stones that Nanyu Laozu had on him were no longer important to him. Among them, there were 2 high-grade heaven-level spirit items, which made White Forehead Lu Shihai and Lu Taohua extremely excited. The high-grade heaven-level metal attribute spirit item, 7 kil copper, and the high-grade heaven-level wood attribute spirit item, Longevity Mountain Bamboo, were both treasures that could only be encountered by chance in the world of practitioners. And these were just a small portion of the treasures in Nanyu Laozu's storage artifact. In the world of practitioners, a great adept of the late Dharma stage could almost rely on his own strength to support a medium-sized sect. Sects with great adepts would usually divide their own inheritance system into two parts. One part was in the heritage grotto where the sect was based, and the other part was in the hands of the great adept. Therefore, every great adept would be able to see a human-shaped treasure trove. It was just that this human-shaped treasure trove itself was extremely powerful, and ordinary people would not dare to have any designs on it. From the South China Sea to now, along the way, Lu Ping had used various methods to distribute many treasures that he did not need to use to his followers. Even so, the collection in Lu Ping's hands was still so rich that it made people's hair stand on end. "Hey, there's actually a piece of meteorite iron here," Lu Ping said as he took out a piece of black iron from the storage artifact and said, "It is indeed the collection of a great adept. Even the meteorite iron, a top-grade spirit treasure, has been collected in such a large piece. You little guys are lucky. The quality of this meteorite iron can even be used to refine spirit treasures. If you have such a meteorite iron in your hands, it will be much easier to improve your natal magic weapons in the future. This meteorite iron can be used to resist the thunder tribulation." Lu Linger was suddenly overjoyed. This meteorite iron had a wide range of uses. She practiced isotribute techniques, and this meteorite iron could also be used. So, for fear that others would take the lead, she hurriedly said, "Linger has found 12 people." Lu Hai sprang out from the bottom of the river and suddenly threw Lu Linger into the water. He laughed and said, "No, I found 13 people." Lu Linger sprang out from the water again and angrily said to Lu Hai, "How dare you sneak attack? Where are there 13 people?" After saying that, she swung her body, and the crystal-white snake tail smashed towards Lu Hai's body. The two of them immediately fought in the middle of the Qingming River, and the originally rapid river flow became even more turbulent because of the two water spirits frolicking. Lu Ping watched the two play and felt very happy, but he still asked Lu Bai, who was experimenting with various spells in the river, "Bai, what do you think?" Lu Bai thought for a moment and said, "There should be 15 people." "Impossible?" Lu Hai and Lu Linger suddenly gave up playing in the Qingming River. Two giant snakes of 10 feet long came towards Lu Bai and asked in unison, "Father, is what Big Sister said true?" Lu Ping smiled and shook his head. Lu Bai looked slightly startled. Lu Hai and Lu Linger giggled and said, "Big Sister is really wrong." But Lu Ping stretched out his hand and flicked out 2 gusts of wind. Poof, poof! 2 sounds were accompanied by 2 cries of pain from Lu Hai and Lu Linger. She heard Lu Ping say, "You 2 mischievous brats, it's not just 15 people, but 18. Your big sister even spotted 2 mid-Dharma adepts, but you 2 still dared to laugh at them. Especially you, Linger, you couldn't even see an early Dharma adept. You've been getting more and more distracted in your cultivation lately." After being scolded by Lu Ping, Lu Linger dove headfirst into the water and didn't come back up even after a long time. Lu Bai, who was beside her, asked, "Father, it's only been 2 hours, but there are already so many people swimming downstream." "Father, I just realized that among the 18 people, there are actually 5 mid-Dharma adepts, and there are even 7 or 8 Dharma adepts. Could it be that something has happened to so many Dharma adepts?" Lu Ping shook his head and said, "It's not just 5 mid-stage Dharma adepts. Among the 5, there are 2 grand adepts. Regardless of what's happening downstream, we'll just ignore it." After saying that, Lu Ping threw the meteoric iron into Lu Bai's hands, which made Lu Hai and Lu Linger very envious. Lu Bai smiled gently and said, "Father is teasing you. How can I use such a big piece of meteoric iron alone? When the time comes, the 3 of us will use it together to improve the magic weapons in our hands." Lu Hai and Lu Linger were overjoyed, and Lu Linger even said loudly, "I know that Big Sister is the best." At this moment, Black Turtle Lu Dugway, who had been moving forward in the Qingming River, suddenly raised his head and said, "Master, there is a huge monster coming in front." After Lu Dugway accepted part of the bloodline of the Tyrant Turtle clan, his strength had increased a lot. He had a secret method that could hear sounds from a very far distance in the water. When Lu Ping heard the huge monster, he first thought that there might be some high-level demon cultivator who had transformed into his original body and was stirring up trouble in the Qingming River. But at this time, Lu Dagui's voice came and said, "It's a ship, a very big ship." A very big ship. Could it be a treasure ship? Whose treasure ship was it? Lu Ping stared at the river surface. Through the light fog on the river surface, he really vaguely saw a huge outline coming on the river surface. Without Lu Ping's instructions, Samling shrunk his body size and climbed onto the back of the black turtle. When he looked again, the huge shadow of the ship broke through the cover of the light fog. A huge Debao ship with a length of 350 feet and a width of 700 feet appeared in Lu Ping's sight. Lu Ping sat on the back of the black turtle and continued to go south. When he passed by the treasure ship, he happened to see two huge words on the side of the treasure ship: Northern Alliance. Chapter 1152. It was the Northern Alliance's treasure ship. Lu Ping's eyes narrowed as he looked at the treasure ship. He naturally knew that the treasure ship was carrying one of the 3 Dharma adepts from the Northern Alliance, Hanya Laozu, who was also one of the main culprits behind the destruction of the Northern Alliance. Before the Northern Alliance adept, Lin Jingtang, died, he had used the Northern Alliance's Elixir Pavilion's inheritance cave as a condition, hoping that Lu Ping would be able to kill Hanya Laozu at the right time. He did not expect to encounter the Northern Alliance's treasure ship here. When Hanya Laozu led a few Dharma adepts under his command and some of the Northern Alliance disciples on the treasure ship to the South Sea, many people had guessed that Hanya Laozu might be going to the South Sea to establish his own sect. Unexpectedly, after Hanya Laozu wandered around the South Sea, he actually went north along the Qingming River. What was Hanya Laozu's intention? Could it be, as many people had guessed, that Hanya Laozu was really the spy that Wishing School had planted, and this time, he was going to bring the treasure ship back to his sect? Thinking about the many Dharma adepts that flew over the Qingming River, Lu Ping's intuition told him that it had something to do with the Northern Alliance's treasure ship. At this moment, Lu Ping suddenly felt that someone on the treasure ship was watching him. Then, not only on the treasure ship, but in the sky above the Qingming River, there seemed to be someone spying on him in the void. Therefore, Lu Ping first looked at the huge treasure ship in shock, then sat on the back of the black tortoise as if nothing had happened, and continued to drift downstream. After Lu Ping had traveled dozens of miles downstream, Lu Linger appeared out of nowhere and said, "Father, are we really not going to see what is going on?" Lu Ping laughed impatiently. "You are always the first to lose your cool. The treasure ship is surrounded by an inescapable net. If we act rashly, we will definitely be surrounded by everyone. Then what should we do?" Lu Ping patted the black tortoise's shell and said, "Let's continue our journey. Even pure Yam cultivators would have to avoid a treasured ship with a great cultivator guarding it. It's not that easy to scheme against it. Let's just have some fun, and it won't be too late to come back when the show begins." When Lu Linger saw that Lu Ping didn't really plan to miss out on the fun, she became excited again. Suddenly, Lu Ping exclaimed in surprise and took out a nameplate from his waist. This token was the identification of a Jinling sect disciple. Lu Ping's name and status in Jinling sect were engraved on it. At this moment, the nameplate was flashing with a hazy light, and it became hotter and hotter. At this time, this token flashed with a dim light, and it became hotter and hotter. A disciple of Jinling was nearby, and he was in danger. The identity nameplates of the sect's disciples could sense each other within a certain range. When they encountered danger, they could also ask for help from their fellow sect brothers within the range. Furthermore, these identity nameplates could only be used by the owner of the nameplate. After the owner died, the nameplate would also shatter. Thus, there was no need to worry about someone setting up a trap with this nameplate. Then there was really a disciple of Jinling nearby. Lu Ping rose into the air and waved his hand. Lu Degui turned from the water into the size of a palm and fell into Lu Ping's hand. Then, the thin water under his feet and the long sword moved side by side. In a trance, Lu Ping was already dozens of feet away, and in the blink of an eye, he had disappeared into the woods on the bank of Qingming River. In the depths of a forest on the north bank of Qingming River, a fierce battle was going on between two people, and the intense spiritual qi caused the surrounding trees to sway. A sloppy young cultivator was chewing on a piece of dog's tail grass as he watched the battle from the top of a huge tree. The surrounding vegetation had long been destroyed, and only the tree he was on was undamaged. After a while, the young cultivator seemed to be extremely annoyed. He spat out the dog's tail grass in his mouth and said, Hey, old six, that's enough. Why can't you take care of these two early Dharma stage wild cultivators after so long? You're the leader of the Six Directions House. I think you should just give up your position. Don't bring shame to your mid-Dharma stage cultivation and bring shame to the direct disciples of Jiuxuan Tower. In the middle of the battle, the cultivator who was fighting 1 against 2 had his 2 opponents completely suppressed. However, the 2 of them were very tenacious. Although they were at a disadvantage, they were not completely defeated. The 9 Xian Tower adept, who was addressed as number 6, unleashed a spell, forcing back the adept who was trying to break free from his suppression. He said angrily, Number 3, it's easy for you to say that. These 2 are not wild adepts. Both of them have a natural grade ability, which is considered good even among early Dharma adepts. Especially since this one has mastered the earth element body. Why don't you tell me, is the earth element body that easy to break free from? The cultivator on the tree casually pulled a branch from the tree and continued chewing on it. He said in a muffled voice, Then do you want me to help you? Get lost! The master of the Six Directions House rejected him without a second thought. He said, Although I have just gone through my first lightning tribulation and can only use 70 to 80% of my strength, I don't need you to interfere in taking care of these 2 people. The cultivator on the tree laughed twice, as if he had heard a joke. He said, You have to think carefully. It seems like they were asking for help just now. If they have help and you still can't take care of them, I'm afraid you'll be the one in trouble. The master of the Six Directions House laughed and said, Don't I still have you? Don't tell me you want to watch your junior brother get surrounded and attacked by them? Be careful. When we get back, those old fellows will punish you for not helping them. The cultivator on the tree suddenly jumped down and walked towards the side of the battle. As he walked, he said, Not helping them when they are dying. Does the 9 Directions House have such a crime? When the master of the Six Directions House saw him walking over, he hurriedly said, Hey, third brother, what are you doing? This is my cup of tea. The third cultivator who came down from the tree had an exasperated expression as he said, What are you talking about? Their help is already right in front of you, and you don't even know it. You're courting death. What? The master of the Six Directions House jumped in fright. To be able to sneak up to him without him noticing, this kind of strength immediately caused his heart to turn cold. His attacks also slowed down, allowing the 2 cultivators he was suppressing to catch their breaths. The 2 of them cooperated and attacked at the same time, causing the master of the Six Directions House to be flustered. After shouting for a long time, he finally regained control of the situation. When the master of the Six Directions House turned around, he saw the master of the 3 Talents House, who was usually not serious, looking into the depths of the forest as if he was facing a great enemy. The master of the 3 Talents House thought to himself, Could it be that the elders of these 2 cultivators have come? Why is third brother so nervous? At this moment, the master of the 3 Talents House shouted, Who is the fellow Taoist in the forest? I am Chang Sankai of the 9 Mystical House. Greetings. Just as the voice rang out, a violent wave inexplicably swept out from Chang Sankai's body toward the forest. Along the way, it was as if a tornado had swept away the clouds. The towering trees were uprooted, and the violent waves seemed to have plowed through the entire world. However, at this moment, a huge natural phenomenon suddenly appeared in the depths of the forest. The clouds in the sky seemed to be driven by someone and gathered above the forest. Immediately after, a wave of dense spiritual chi surged out from the depths of the forest like a flood. Half of the forest was submerged by this flood, and then it collided with the violent wave that was plowing through the trees. Rumble! In an instant, the entire world seemed to have gone silent. Then, Chang Sansai's expression changed. The torrent of spiritual chi that seemed to have descended from the sky overshadowed the violent hurricane that he had unleashed. The huge trees, sand, and rocks that were swept up into the air were smashed back toward Chang Sankai along with the torrent. The master of the Three Talents house felt as if he was going against the torrent of the entire Qingming River with his own strength. Before the torrent came crashing down on him, he was already somewhat discouraged. Using the power of heaven and earth for his own use and transforming the power of heaven and earth into his own body, this person's comprehension of spells and abilities was far above his own. Chang Sankai involuntarily took a few steps back. Hey, third brother Chang, can you do it? When the master of the Six Talents house saw that the master of the Three Talents house was at a disadvantage, he immediately let out a strange cry. Then, as if he had thought of something, he opened his mouth and asked the two cultivators that he had been suppressing. I say, where did the two of you come from? Shouldn't you reveal your identities now? One of them snorted coldly and said, in front of the master of the Three Talents house and the master of the Six Talents house of the Nine Mystical house, who has the right to reveal their identities? The other person said, Sir, you attacked right from the start. Did you ever think of asking about our origins? Ahahaha. The master of the Six Talents house laughed dryly. He could not see the figure of the person who had come, but third brother Chang had been at a disadvantage all along. Until now, that mischievous face of his had not made a single sound. It was obvious that the strength of the person who had come was far beyond their imagination. Hence, he hurriedly said, I have just advanced to the mid-dharma stage and am itching to fight. It is really a misunderstanding. Come to think of it, we have been fighting for so long, but I have not used any killing moves. Without waiting for him to finish speaking, a loud shout suddenly exploded in the master of the Six Talents house's ear. My hands are also itching to fight now. Please give me some pointers, master. Don't worry, I will not use any killing moves. The master of the Six Talents house was shaken by the divine will attack that was contained in this loud shout. His face turned pale, and the two Dharma adepts that he had suppressed took the opportunity to come out. Then, he saw a pair of flying swords suddenly appear in midair. The blades of the swords crossed and slashed towards his neck. The master of the Six Talents house was shocked and disappeared in a flash. When he reappeared, he was already in front of the master of the Three Talents house. It was obvious that he wanted to join forces with the master. Unexpectedly, just as the master of the Six Talents house steadied himself, he felt a slight chill at the back of his head. Then, with a crisp clang, a dark blue flying sword flashed in midair and disappeared. The double flying sword, the invisible water sword. The person who has come is the North Sea Water Sword deity, Lu Tianping. Chapter 1153. Shan Laosan's shout came from behind the leader of the Six Harmonies house. When he turned to look, he saw the leader of the Three Talents house holding a pair of copper cymbals. He had just used this first calamity's spiritual treasure to send the shapeless sword flying. A small tuft of hair fell, and the leader of the Six Harmonies house immediately broke out in a cold sweat. He knew that if the opponent really wanted his life, the attack from the leader of the Three Talents house's cymbals would have been too late. The faint sound of footsteps came from the forest. The leader of the Three Talents house and the leader of the Six Harmonies house stared into the depths of the forest, as if trying to see through the cover of the trees to see who was approaching. On the other side, the two Dharma adepts who had just broken free from the suppression of the leader of the Six Harmonies house also looked pleasantly surprised. They walked towards the edge of the forest, as if they had already recognized who was approaching and were going to welcome them. The two of them were actually cultivators from the North Sea Jinling sect. Judging from their strength, they were not considered weak among the early Dharma adepts. No wonder there were rumors in the world of practitioners that the North Sea would soon have another large sect. Initially, Zhou Donghuan had thought that it was just a joke. What could a sect from the North Sea achieve? However, as Lu Tianping's reputation grew, many people in Central Plains began to take notice of the medium-sized sect behind Lu Tianping, the Jinling sect. Today, they saw that the two of them had actually managed to tangle with the head of the Six Harmonies House, one of the 9 heads of the 9 Harmonies House, for so long. Even though the head of the Six Harmonies House did not seem to be at his peak, it was still a commendable feat among the third-generation Dharma adepts. He was considered a tough opponent. Lu Ping's figure quickly walked out from the forest. Although he already knew who the two people fighting with the leader of the Six Harmonies House were, when he saw them, Lu Ping could not help but be overjoyed. "Big brother Tianyuan, we haven't seen each other for more than 10 years. Both of you have also condensed your Dharma laws." The two people in front of him were Jiang Tianlin's eldest disciple, Xian Tian, and Lao Zu's disciple, Lu Xianyuan. Both of them were already at the early Dharma stage, and it was obvious that they were the first disciples of the third generation of Jinling's disciples to reach the Dharma stage after Lu Ping. It was just that after Xian Tian had advanced to the Dharma stage, he had become Tian, which was really awkward to say. Fortunately, Lu Ping and he could be considered to be of the same lineage, and Xian Tianjin was originally the eldest disciple of Tianlin Laozu, so Lu Ping simply called him eldest brother. However, when Lu Ping deliberately called him eldest brother, Tianyuan could not help but laugh out loud. As for Tian, he also had a helpless expression on his face. It was obvious that many people had already made fun of him because of this. After all, it was an extremely happy thing to meet in the Central Plains. Tian smiled and said, "If your brother Tianyuan and I still do not advance to the Dharma stage, we will be dragging the sect down. No matter what, we cannot let you bear the burden of the third generation of disciples alone." Lu Tianyuan, who was at the side, also sighed. "I never thought that after seeing you, junior brother, we would still be dragging the sect down. Junior brother, you have already gone through one lightning tribulation and reached the mid-Dharma stage." As there were still 2 leaders of the 9 Harmonies House here, the 3 of them only exchanged a few pleasantries before looking at the 2 of them. The leader of the 6 Harmonies House laughed, and said, "You are indeed the North Sea water swordsman. As the saying goes, hearing about you is not as good as seeing you in person. Seeing you today has really broadened my horizons. Even third brother Chang could not do anything to you. I really admire you." "Humph!" The house master of 3 talents snorted. They had only exchanged blows once, but they had a rough idea of each other's strength. Not only was he helpless against Lu Ping, but he was also at a disadvantage. "Humph!" The house master of 3 talents snorted. "I dare not!" Lu Ping naturally would not argue with others over this, and he would not take the initiative to provoke the heirs of these holy lands. He smiled slightly and said, "I am Lu Tianping of the North Sea Jinling. These 2 are my seniors. How do I address you 2, and do you have any grudges with my seniors?" The leader of the Trinity House pulled out another stalk of grass and chewed it in his mouth. His exchange with Lu Ping had shaken the inner yuan in his chest. Even now, he had not completely calmed down, so how could he be in the mood to speak? The leader of the 6 Harmonies House smiled helplessly and said, "I believe the 3 of you already know that we are from the 9 Mysteries House. This is the leader of the Trinity House. His surname is Chang, so you can call him Chang Sankai. As for the person in charge of the 6 Harmonies House, his surname is Sun, so you can call me Sun Liuha." The 9 leaders of the 9 Mysteries House rarely used their own names in the world of practitioners. Usually, they used the name of the 9 Mysteries House they were in charge of. Practitioners in the world of practitioners would usually know their status in the 9 Mysteries House through this form of address. The leader of the Trinity House was naturally ranked third among the 9 heirs of the 9 Mysteries House, and this Sun Liuhe was naturally the 6th. Lu Ping did not wish to offend the two, so he cupped his hands together and said, "Nice to meet you." When Sun Liuhe saw the indifferent expression on Lu Ping's face, he knew that the latter was waiting for him to continue. Hence, he said, "As for your 2 senior brothers, we do not wish to make things difficult for them. We are only warning the 2 of you not to interfere in this matter. In fact, this is also for the good of Lu Daoyu's 2 senior brothers and your sect." Lu Tianyuan did not seem to wish for Lu Ping to become enemies with the 9 Mysteries House because of this, so he said in a low voice, "This person has indeed not killed anyone." Lu Ping was startled. He then asked, "Why are my 2 senior brothers interfering?" Sun Liuhe was stunned. "Why? Does Lu Daoyu not know what Lu Daoyu is doing here?" Lu Ping said coldly. "What? Do you think I must have some ulterior motives for coming here?" Just as Sun Liuhe was about to speak, Chang Sankai interjected. "Since Lu Daoyu does not know anything, then let this matter rest. In any case, the Northern Alliance's treasure ship has great implications, and the 5 Holy Lands have already sent their people here. This matter is far from something that Lu Daoyu and your sect can handle. Rashly interfering will only bring you trouble. That's all I have to say. Lu Daoyu, good luck. Old 6, let's go." Sun Liuhe smiled at Lu Ping and the others before the 2 turned around and disappeared into the forest. After the 2 left, Lu Tianyuan asked, "Junior brother, didn't you go to the South Sea? Why are you here?" "I only activated my identity plate with the hope of getting lucky. I didn't expect a disciple of my sect to really be here, and it's you, junior brother." Lu Ping briefly told them about his trip to the South Sea, but he did not mention anything about the Samling 5 Elements leaf, the Golden Scales, the Sword of True Spirit, Dark Sky Island, and killing Nanyu Laozu. He only said that he met a Formation Master at the Dark Sky Array and obtained the inheritance of an Formation Master. Even so, the 2 sighed with emotion after listening to it, secretly praising Lu Ping's good luck. However, Tian Tian said, "There was a rumor in the cultivation world that the Formation Grand Master of the Yuan clan had unlocked the 9 major formations of Dark Sky Island and obtained a great fortuitous opportunity after sneaking into Dark Sky Island. After leaving Dark Sky Island and killing the Yulin sect's great cultivator Nanyu, he disappeared without a trace. Junior brother, you were there at the time. Do you know what happened?" Lu Ping was stunned for a moment before he asked, "Didn't the Yuan clan come forward to clarify the matter and say that Wen Yuan died over a decade ago? Who would believe that?" Lu Tianyuan continued, "Rumor has it that Wen Yuan may have obtained the heaven-opening relic." The rumor in the cultivation world is that either Wen Yuan took the treasure and left the Yuan clan, went into hiding, and then used a secret technique to extinguish his soul lamp, causing him to fake his death, or the Yuan clan tried to cover it up after obtaining the treasure. In short, they just don't believe that Wen Yuan has died. You must know that Wen Yuan was only at the mid-Dharma stage. Although he had some achievements in the field of formations, his own strength was limited. If someone really was impersonating him, then Li Shiqian from the Crystal Palace, Guan Yu from the Guanfa sect, and Nanyu Laozu from the Yulin sect were not weaklings. How could they not see through it? As for the reason that Nanyu Laozu was able to kill him, it was naturally because of the heaven-opening relic. Many people saw the light that shot up into the sky that day, and it was also during that period of time that the entire cultivation world was filled with strange phenomena, especially the 6 Holy Lands, the Yuan clan, and several large demon tribes. The phenomenon was so vast that it was witnessed by many people. The soul lamp was connected to the cultivator's life. When a cultivator died, the soul lamp would definitely be extinguished, but this did not mean that the cultivator would definitely die. Many cultivators had mastered a secret technique. Once they fell into a dangerous situation, they would be alone and helpless. When faced with a life or death situation, they would use this secret technique to extinguish their own soul lamp. When the cultivator's sects found out about this, they would definitely send people to investigate. Therefore, when a cultivator was in danger, they would usually have this last chance of survival. If Wen Yuan really wanted to leave the Yuan clan, he could use this secret technique to extinguish his soul lamp and then hide on Kongming Island to avoid the investigation of the Yuan clan. After a long time, the Yuan clan would definitely think that Wen Yuan was dead. In this way, he would be able to take the treasure for himself, and then change his appearance and live freely in the world. If Wen Yuan had not died at his hands, even Lu Ping himself would have believed that Wen Yuan had not died, but had instead hidden away with the treasure. Lu Ping naturally agreed with this speculation of the cultivation world. He said, "That is indeed a possibility. But what about the heaven-opening relic?" Tian Tian said, "That is why we are here. The so-called heaven-opening relic is naturally the treasure left behind by the seventh patriarch of the heaven-opening relic. The heaven-opening relic that Wen Yuan activated in the South Sea must have just taken shape. It is said that before Wen Yuan came out of Kongming Island, the tribulation clouds above Kongming Island had gathered for more than a year. This must have been the tribulation for the heaven-opening relic to take shape." Later, Wen Yuan was forced by Nanyu Laozu to activate the heaven-opening relic for the first time and kill Nanyu Laozu. However, it also caused the heaven-opening relic left behind by the time lock to respond. When the heaven-opening relic responded to each other, apart from the Holy Lands and sects, there was also one that appeared on the Northern Alliance's ship. The Northern Alliance's ship? That's right. The cultivators who have gathered here were originally going to the South Sea to kill Wen Yuan, but the appearance of the heaven-opening relic will only attract the response of all the heaven-opening relics. Wen Yuan has disappeared, and it is impossible to find him through the heaven-opening relics. Unexpectedly, after the treasure ship left behind by the Northern Alliance passed through the stormy sea, there was news of the heaven-opening relics responding to the heavenly phenomenon. Oh, so the heaven-opening relic will only respond when it appears for the first time. Chapter 1154. Two rays of light flashed across the sky one after the other. Sun Liuhe shouted from behind, "Lao San, Chang Lao San, how can you leave like this? Why are you leaving so fast?" The thing that Chang Sankai was chewing on had somehow turned into a small wooden stick. He put the stick to the side of his mouth and said, "In any case, I'm no match for him. I've already warned him, so what's the point of staying there?" Sun Liuhe made an exaggerated expression of surprise and said, "No way, this isn't your style, Chang Lao-san. You even said that you weren't a match for him. Is that North Sea water sword immortal really that powerful?" Chang Sankai immediately said angrily, "I lost to him in just one move. Boss Wei is only SOSO. Even Qianliang can't do that. What do you think?" Sun Liuhe's lips twitched, but he couldn't say a word. Chang Sankai turned around and left. Sun Liuhe hesitated for a moment before he hurriedly followed and said, "Then what should we do? If they insist on interfering, there's nothing we can do." Chang Sankai sneered. "Are you stupid? If they don't want to live, why are you worried?" Sun Liuhe slapped his forehead, as if blaming himself for asking such a stupid question. Then he thought of something and said, "But we can't let anyone know about this. It's quite embarrassing." Chang Sankai continued flying, but he heard Sun Liuhe say, "No, we can't just let this go. We've suffered a loss at the hands of Lu Tianping, and the other families can't have it easy either. We have to think of a way to make them suffer as well." Lu Tianping was completely unaware that the two people from Jiuxuan Tower were secretly plotting against him. At this moment, he was asking Lu Tianyuan and Sun Liuhe about some matters in the sect. "Currently, among the third generation of practitioners, only your senior brother Tianyuan and I have advanced to the Dharma stage. All these years, your senior brother Tianyuan and I have been guarding the Yingtian courtyard, but we have not heard of any third-generation disciples advancing to the Dharma stage. However, a few years ago, there was news from Uncle Master Tianfeng from the East Sea. It seems that junior brother Xianchu has also reached the threshold of the Dharma stage. Junior brother Xuanchu's talent is above both of us, so he must have advanced to the Dharma stage by now. Oh, being Tian Courtyard has always been guarded by two senior brothers. What about Marshall and Tian Qin? The other two have already left the courtyard. Who did the sect send? The two looked at each other. In the end, it was Tian who said, Marshall Uncle Tian Qin returned to the North Sea 5 years ago. After 3 years of seclusion, he forcefully summoned the lightning tribulation. Right now, Marshall Uncle Tian Shan is guarding the courtyard. Lu Ping's heart sank as he exclaimed. It failed? Lu Tianyuan shook his head and said, That's not it. I survived. He had survived, but it was not a success. Lu Ping naturally knew the difference. He asked, What happened? Lu Tianyuan said, I forcefully went through the tribulation, and my injuries were too severe. Master Fornax said that I would not be able to recover without more than 100 years of rest. Even if I recover in the future, although there is still a glimmer of hope for me to improve further, it is still very slim. Cultivation was like this. It was best to always be able to walk on a narrow and correct path. Otherwise, if there was even the slightest mistake, it would often be the end of one's cultivation career. Tian Qin Laozu's personality was competitive and stubborn. Forcefully summoning the lightning tribulation probably had something to do with Master Tianling Laozu's successful advancement to the mid-Dharma stage. Compared to her, Master Lu Tianling was also competitive, but there was a sense of rationality that controlled her actions. It was precisely because of this competitive nature that Jiang Tianlin Laozu had finally returned to her side. Mei Tianqin Laozu was also able to return to the sect, and Jinling had chosen her to be the leader. Although Lu Ping was talented in alchemy, he did not dare to compare himself to Fornax Laozu, who had immersed himself in alchemy for many years. Furthermore, he was Tian Qin Laozu's teacher. Since he said that Tian Qin Laozu would need more than 100 years to recover, then this period of time could only be the shortest, or even longer. Lu Ping sighed to himself. If Tian Qin Laozu did not fight for these 8 to 10 years, he would not have wasted 80 to 100 years in one go. At least in this period of time, Jinling would have one less Dharma adept. In the long run, Tian Qin Laozu had made a decision that harmed others without benefiting herself. Ever since Tian Kong Laozu had fallen, and with the addition of Tian Qin Laozu, Jinling had lost 2 Dharma adepts in a short period of time. Fortunately, Tian and Tian Yuan had both advanced to the Dharma stage, and Lu Tianyuan had absorbed the Dharma soul that Tian Kong Laozu had left behind. As long as he did not die prematurely, Jinling had an 80% chance of having another mid-Dharma adept in the next 100 years. Currently, the number of Dharma adepts in Jinling's sect was sufficient. In fact, the number of Dharma adepts in Jinling's sect was already comparable to that of the smaller, weaker sections. However, they were still lacking in the number of late and mid-Dharma adepts. The composition of the Dharma adepts in the sect was somewhat illogical. Has the Tsunghai sect made any moves in recent years? Lu Ping asked about the situation of the other sects in the North Sea training world. Ever since the fall of Jiangxi, the Tsunghai sect has become extremely low-key. They no longer have any direct confrontations with our sect. Even in the past, they often joined forces with Xianling sect. Lu Ping sighed and said, This Tsunghai sect has always been a problem. Have you found out who is behind them? They are very mysterious, but they should be from the Central Plains. In recent years, many of the Tsunghai sect have gone to the Central Plains from the East Sea. However, after arriving in the Central Plains, no one knows where they went. Lu Tianyuan paused and said, There is another piece of news that might interest you, junior brother. That Ouyang Weijian from Xianling's sect has advanced to the Dharma stage, and he did so before us. Lu Ping nodded and said, This is expected. After spending so much time with the direct disciples of the Crystal Palace, if he still could not advance to the Dharma stage, he would have been thrown out by the Crystal Palace long ago. At the same time, the battle between Magic Cloud City and Mara's army had reached its climax. At this time, the entire Magic Cloud City had been enveloped by the city protecting formation. The teleporter in the city had also been cut off from the nearby void by Mara's army and could no longer function. The entire city protecting formation had become dangerously red under the fierce attacks of Mara's army. The city protecting formation would not be able to hold on for much longer. Above Magic Cloud City, several Dharma adepts looked sullen. An old man shouted angrily at one of the young Dharma adepts. "Didn't you say that the power of Magic Cloud City was enough to withstand the arrival of Mara's army? In fact, Mara's army is twice as strong as what you said. Now that Magic Cloud City is about to collapse, the Yuan family is the culprit." Yuan Jinglei, who was standing to one side, was furious when he heard this. Just as he was about to curse, he was stopped by a practitioner next to him. It was Yuan Ku from the Yuan family. Yuan Ku said coldly, "Senior Mu Yun, there is one thing that you don't seem to understand. We, the Yuan family, are here to help. If we didn't come, there would be many Mara besieging Magic Cloud City. Do you think that Magic Cloud City would be able to hold on until now?" Mu Yun Laozu was rendered speechless by Yuan Ku's words. He naturally knew that it was unreasonable for him to vent his anger on them. However, at this time, Magic Cloud City was in a precarious situation. Mu Yun Laozu really needed an excuse to vent his anger. Mu Yun Laozu did not say anything. Xian Yun Laozu, who was standing to one side, said, "Junior brother Mu Yun, you are a little rash. The friends of the Yuan family are now besieging Magic Cloud City with us. No matter what, this is the time to find a solution. If anyone still tries to undermine us at this time, don't blame the old man for being merciless." Xian Yun Laozu was the city lord of Magic Cloud City and a proper late Dharma adept. As soon as he said this, even Mu Yun Laozu could not help but say, "The old man was rude earlier. I hope the Yuan family will forgive him." Yuan Jinglei snorted coldly. Yuan Ku, who was standing to one side, nodded and said with a smile, "It's understandable that Senior Mu Yun is worried about the safety of the sect." However, Xian Yun Laozu said at this time, "Let's go. Senior Sister Baiyun has been guarding the sect's formation. We can't just sit around and do nothing. There are actually 2 Azuras in Mara's army. This is really a tough battle." As soon as he said this, a commotion suddenly came from the west of Magic Cloud City. There seemed to be screams and curses ringing out. Xian Yun Laozu frowned and said, "What's going on? How can we panic at a time like this? Who's guarding over there?" Mu Yun Laozu said, "Junior brother Chong Yun is guarding over there. I'm afraid that something bad has happened. The old man, let's go and take a look." However, before Mu Yun Laozu could make a move, a streak of flame had already flown over. Xian Yun Laozu stretched out his finger and pointed right at the center of the flame. A flustered and exasperated voice with a hint of fear rang out from the scattering flames. Master has been plotted against and has already fallen. The murderer is a person in red." Mu Yun Laozu did not say a word. He turned around and disappeared into the void around him. At this time, Xian Yun Laozu's face was also very gloomy. He said, "At this time, the west of the city must be in danger. I'll have to trouble the 2 of you to go to the west of the city to stabilize the situation. The old man will be here soon." This time, 3 of the 5 Dharma adepts from the Yuan family, as well as more than 10 core forging experts, had already been sent out to defend the city walls with the Magic Cloud City cultivators. At this time, Xian Yun Laozu was only left with 2 mid-Dharma adepts, Yuan Ku and Yuan Jinglei. Yuan Ku and Yuan Jinglei knew that the situation in Magic Cloud City had reached an extremely dangerous situation. Hearing this, they also moved to the west of the city. Xian Yun Laozu suddenly exhaled and said word by word, "There are spies in Magic Cloud City. My friends, please be careful. Disciples of Magic Cloud City, listen up. Once you find the spies, surround and kill them on the spot." The Magic Cloud City had a circumference of dozens of miles. It was a huge city. Although the voice of the idle cloud ancestor was not loud, it spread to every corner of the magic cloud city. It was a marvelous technique. However, before many of the magic cloud city cultivators could be impressed by Xian Yunlaozu's remarkable skills, a shrill scream came from the south of the city. The high-pitched scream almost tore the eardrums of everyone present. "Oh no, it's Brother Qingyun!" 2 mid-Dharma adepts had fallen in Magic Cloud City one after another, and the cultivators in the city were suddenly in chaos. Everyone was in danger, and the defense against Mara outside the city was getting weaker. Magic Cloud City was about to fall. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.